on state and local government will come to order. We will be gaveling back in from recess. Our first bill coming up is Senate File 3685. Senator Kunesh. And Senator Kunesh, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Chair, and for getting us in here and making sure we get this heard. I have a bill here about e-books in public and school libraries, but first I have an A1 amendment.
Certainly, Senator McQuaid moves the A1 amendment. While it's getting passed out, would you like to go over the bill?
It just changes the language from publisher to vendor, and then because the libraries don't work with publishers, they work with vendors. We just removed the implication of publishers in the bill.
All right. Again, Senator McQuaid moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Kunesh.
Thank you. So Minnesota libraries are facing increasing unsustainable challenges in providing e-books and digital audio books to the public. Under our current licensing laws, libraries are required to lease and not own digital materials, and they pay 4 to 5 times what a consumer pays for the same title. These licenses often expire after 2 years or 26 checkouts, and that forces our libraries to repurchase the same books repeatedly at an inflated amount. Because ebooks can't be shared through interlibrary loans, communities and especially smaller and rural libraries lose access to materials their local libraries cannot afford. School libraries are hit especially hard. Only 54% of our Minnesota schools have a licensed library media specialist that is authorized to make these purchases, and the median school library budget is around $5,000. These schools often depend on the public library digital collections, which are themselves strained. So the result is reduced access for Minnesotans, including readers with visual impairment, students with IEP or 504 plans, and anyone who relies on digital format. We know that our taxpayers ultimately are shouldering this high long-term cost as libraries repeatedly have to relicense the same materials instead of owning them. This legislation protects taxpayer dollars. It restores local control and ensures Minnesotans can access digital materials fairly and sustainably. And so, Mr. Chair, that is our bill, and I do have a testifier.
Right, thank you, Senator Kunesh. And we have first up Todd Hill, and then Sarah Hawkins. To the testifier, please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Hawkins. I'm the Assistant Director at Anoka County Library and the Legislative Chair of the Minnesota Library Association. Today, I'm here to talk about fair ebook access for Minnesota libraries and why Senate File 3685 is urgently needed. Minnesota libraries are facing significant challenges in providing affordable and equitable access to digital materials, and I'd like to share why this matters and how to fix it. First, it's important to note that this bill applies only to ebooks and e-audiobooks. It does not affect magazines, newspapers, or other digital formats. The focus is strictly on the most in-demand digital reading formats where the pricing and licensing problems are the most severe. Under current publisher licensing models, libraries pay dramatically higher prices for ebooks than for print, often 3 to 5 times more. And unlike print books, we don't own those digital titles. Libraries lease them, and those libraries expire after 2 years or 26 checkouts. That means taxpayer dollars go towards short-lived rentals rather than long-term community assets. The model has strained budgets for over a decade and reduced access to the materials Minnesotans rely on for reading, learning, and research. These challenges extend beyond cost. Ebooks typically can't be shared through interlibrary loan, which limits access, especially for smaller communities. Vendors also require non-disclosure agreements, blocking contract transparency and making it harder for libraries to advocate for fair terms. This creates problems in 3 key areas: access, accessibility, and fiscal responsibility. High prices and restrictions mean many schools depend heavily on public libraries because they can't afford their own digital collections. Digital audiobooks and ebooks are essential for patrons with visual or reading impairments and for students with IEPs or 504 plans. When libraries can't afford ebooks, we can't fully serve the people who need these formats most. Fiscal responsibility is also a major concern. Because licenses expire, libraries pay repeatedly for the same titles. In 2025, Twin Cities Public Libraries had nearly 14 million checkouts and spent $6.5 million on digital content, yet our unmet need still exceeded $21 million. One example, Metro Libraries spent over $55,000 on a single popular author's digital titles and purchased 835 licenses, yet thousands of readers are still waiting, even though print copies sat on our shelves. All of those digital licenses will expire and need to be repurchased. It's important to understand that high ebook prices for libraries don't benefit the authors. Vendors and publishers retain most of the extra revenue, while authors receive only a standard royalty, a fixed percentage that doesn't increase when a library pays more. Authors don't earn more when a library is charged 3, 4, or 5 times the retail price. Libraries and authors are natural partners. Libraries drive discovery, and library readers often become book buyers. Independent bookstores benefit from this discovery as well. When readers discover a new author through their library, whether through browsing, recommendations, or digital borrowing, they often go on to purchase that author's books. A strong library ecosystem supports a strong local book-selling ecosystem. And it's worth clarifying, independent publishers are not the problem. Many of them already offer fair, sustainable terms. At its core, this issue is driven by the licensing practices of the Big 5 publishers, who dominate the market and set the most restrictive and expensive digital terms. This legislation helps ensure that public funds aren't forced into these inequitable pricing models. In most areas of government purchasing, such as software, agencies receive transparent contracts, price caps, and predictable terms. Ebook vendors offer none of these safeguards. Ebook pricing is a major outlier in government purchasing, and taxpayers are bearing the cost. Fortunately, there's a proven model. Connecticut adopted a practical, contract-based approach that focuses on what publicly funded libraries can control, how they spend taxpayer dollars. Their law restricts unfair contract terms, bans non-disclosure agreements, protects patron privacy, and ensures that libraries can purchase multiple copies as needed on release day, and requires fair alternatives to expiring licenses. Senate File 3685 follows the same model. It applies to public and K-12 school libraries and aims to protect taxpayer dollars, restore local control, ensure sustainable ebook access, and strengthen Minnesota's reading ecosystem. Libraries support literacy, educational success, and community well-being. Thank you for your time and your commitment to Minnesota's libraries and readers.
Thank you. Next up, Todd Hill from Capital Strategies. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Thank you, Chair Xiong and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Todd Hill with Hill Capital Strategies, and I'm here on behalf of our client, the Association of American Publishers. I would draw your attention to the letter our client filed with the committee, along with letters from the News Media Alliance, the Independent Book Publishers Association, and the Authors Guild in opposition to Senate File 3685. On behalf of hundreds of thousands of authors, creators, and publishers in Minnesota and across the country, we oppose this legislation because it will significantly harm readers in Minnesota, undermine the rights of authors and publishers, and threaten the viability of independent bookstores. Digital access has expanded how people read and listen to books. In addition to print books, publishers now offer the latest best-selling novels to libraries in digital formats that library patrons can borrow instantly without having to visit a physical location. More patrons than ever before can access for free at the push of a button a record number of award-winning and best-selling titles and literary works that they might otherwise have purchased from a bookseller. Under federal copyright law, authors and publishers hold the exclusive rights to their creative works. These rights include the authority to decide whether, when, and how those works are reproduced, distributed, and licensed, including to libraries and other book markets like independent bookstores. This legislation attempts to take away the rights from authors and publishers and other creators, enabling the government to make decisions about creators' intellectual property instead of the creators themselves. Libraries receive multiple licenses from publishers that permit them to make ebooks available over and over again to patrons at an aggregate cost that is far less than the per-reader personal use. I offer as an example what the Minnesota Library Association just talked about with one popular author where they purchased 835 copies. That actually equates to 21,710 individual licenses. And they purchased those licenses for $55,711.20. If they paid the same price that you and I paid, they would have paid $325,650. So currently they saved almost $270,000 under the process that we have in place today. The likely impact of this legislation is that it will reduce rather than expand access to digital library materials in Minnesota. When publishers cannot meet the restrictive demands in this legislation, libraries may very well lose access to new releases, experience higher cost, or be prohibited by the state from licensing ebooks and audiobooks altogether. And while the proponents of this legislation suggest it is dissimilar to legislation passed in other states and found unconstitutional by the courts because we're focusing on contracts and vendors, this legislation will still result in vendors and the state telling copyright holders what terms they must accept in order to provide their works to libraries. Under federal law, creators and copyright holders are granted significant protections and the sole right to set the terms and conditions. And while it is true there have been no challenges to the Connecticut law, the truth is that law has yet to be implemented and won't be implemented until numerous other states adopt similar legislation. Until that happens, it is unlikely there will be any legal claims. It is for these reasons that groups who stand in opposition to this legislation include, among others, numerous authors, creators, book publishers, the more than 17,000 members of the Authors Guild, the American Booksellers Association, the News Media Alliance, Independent Book Publishers Association, and my client, the Association of American Publishers. Thank you for your time to testify today, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. With that, members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Bahr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure where I need to start with this, but being an avid reader and listening to many audiobooks, I buy mine through an Audible Pro app, so I don't get them through the library, so I'm not familiar with the library process. Let's just get that out front. I'm having a hard time understanding. The author is the one that needs to get paid. The author is the one that created the book. So can you kind of walk me through maybe this is for the Anoka Library, when you purchase a contract, and then if Mr. Hill, you could tap in at the end, because I think there's some middle ground here someplace, but this bill I don't believe is it. The author's the one that needs to get paid. Can you kind of walk me through, if I remember right, when we talked earlier, it was like you get to listen to the book 27 times and you got to repurchase your contract. I'm just missing something here, because no matter how many times you buy this, I don't see where the author is the one getting paid. So once the book is recorded into an audiobook fashion, it's a matter of, I mean, you got an upfront cost to get this, but once it's created, the author's not getting paid anymore. It's a digital copy. I mean, I'm just having a hard time understanding. This doesn't quite make sense to me, what we're trying to do here. I know that's not really a question, but how are we going to get the author paid? That's where I want to go.
Maybe Senator Kunesh or the testifier.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Chair, Senator, just want to first of all say that there's nothing in this legislation that says that we aren't willing to release titles. We are saying that we don't want them to be leased and at such an exorbitant cost. We are happy to, enter into contracts that are fair on those terms. But right now, when we purchase a title, for either 2 years typically or 26 checkouts, again, at 3 to 5 times the cost of what an individual consumer does. When we buy that, we're purchasing it from a vendor. That vendor, right off the bat, takes off 30% off the top. Of the remaining 70%, that 70% goes to the publisher. And then of that amount, typically 10 to 25% of that amount is what's going to the author. So the author is just getting a small portion of that in and of itself. The author makes the same amount whether a library is buying it typically or whether a retail is buying it. So what we're saying is that right now, all of the additional revenue is going to the publisher, and what we say is that there's plenty of additional room in there for the publisher to renegotiate their terms with their creator so that they are taking less of the pie home and giving more to the author.
Senator Bahr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the bill, the amendment here, you changed the publisher to vendor in every instance. So why would that allow you, by doing that, would that allow you to contract directly with publishers and bypass vendors?
Senator Kunesh or the testifiers?
Mr. Chair, Senator, we can't contact directly with the publishers because they don't have the platform to deliver that content to us. We rely on the vendor who provides the app, who has all the digital rights management built in that prevents us from, prevents users from copying it, prevents it from being widely available, makes it on you get this item for 21 days and then it gets returned. That is all, technology is all built through the vendor. So the publishers are selling to the vendor who then sells to us.
Senator Bahr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hill, we have also talked about this bill, and you also know that I'm an avid reader and how I purchase books, and both print and audio. And when I talked to you, it was the same question. How are we paying the author, and why can't the library come directly to the publishers? Can you kind of just fill me in on some of that?
Mr. Hill?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Senator Bahr. So I don't represent the vendors. The vendors are not.
You're a publisher, yep.
Yep, we represent the publishers and in conjunction with the authors. I think as the library said, the challenge is that the publishers don't have the platform to provide digital content. That is what the vendors provide. And what I'm not aware of is how that the libraries negotiate that contract with the vendors. If that's part of their licensing agreement that they pay, we provide the titles to the vendors, and we negotiate with the authors when they bring their creations to us, what they will be compensated for that publication. It is then the publisher's responsibility to market, to promote. There's quite a bit of work that goes into bringing a creation to the marketplace. The substantial amount of editing, and I was talking with my client about this the other day. The rough drafts are really, really rough. So there's a substantial amount of time and energy that goes into that. But we don't have any say in the relationship that the libraries have with the vendors or the rates that they pay. If the challenge for this bill, and it doesn't talk about price, but the challenge for this bill is what it does suggest is that the vendors are going to have to come back to the publisher and the author and say, in Minnesota, the terms are you must do this. And that is where the bill causes some problems. When we begin the negotiations with the authors decide in conjunction with the publishers. There are authors who may say, you know what, I'm fine with having unlimited access to this publication, or I'm fine with 100 uses, that it doesn't need to be renewed at such and such a time or date. But those are all decisions that the author and the publisher make when they bring that publication to market.
Senator Bahr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I can support the bill in its current form, but I understand where the problem's at, and I would really encourage both sides to find a way to get the author paid directly or get unlimited use, or, well, not unlimited use. I don't want unlimited use. I actually want you to pay for every time you loan it. And if we can find a way to have a smaller upfront charge, and then every time it's loaned, the publisher would get paid off of that, which would then go back to the publishers, or the vendor would get paid, then to the publishers, and then to the author. I think that's where the middle ground needs to be, and this is not what this bill says, but that's where it probably needs to end up somehow. So that's it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kunesh?
Sure, but that's not what this bill is setting out to do. It's setting out to remove some of the restrictions to negotiate those prices. And that's what we want to do with this bill. I mean, this bill isn't saying, okay, we're going to sit down and negotiate all of this for you. That's the free will of business, right, of commerce. And we're not trying to mandate that at all. We're actually saying you now have to allow these things to happen, this negotiating, the renegotiating. We can't dictate from the publisher or the vendor how much that author is going to get. But what the libraries want to do is be able to have a fair opportunity, because they're locked in right now. There is no way to negotiate with them. So we're trying to open up the opportunity for those negotiations for the libraries. I mean, we can't do this for the authors or the vendors or the publishers, but we can do this for the libraries.
Respond. Do you have an additional question?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Senator
I got one more question, I guess, because that's, thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill actually says that we won't enter into contracts. It doesn't say we'll negotiate, it just says we won't enter into, and I'm afraid if we pass the bill, what we'll end up with is in very short order, we won't have any electronic books to be loaned out, and that's what I want to avoid. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
To the testifier.
Mr. Chair, Senator, just wanted to say that we are here in the Metro, in the Twin Cities Metro, we are the largest circulating digital consortium worldwide. So we do have some buying power here. We also included in the bill is a trigger for 7 million, population of 7 million or more outside of Minnesota. So what we're looking to do is build a coalition of states who are on the same page. There are other states that are considering this. You know, Connecticut has passed it. It's also advancing in New Jersey. It's advancing in Illinois. A few other states are considering it as well. So the hope is that libraries, you know, across the country, states across the country are coming together to build this coalition so that we are able to then negotiate.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Kunesh, for bringing this bill. You know, there's a joke that goes around a lot that's like, oh, if somebody proposed libraries today, it would never pass into law because people are just like fundamentally opposed to the concept of public shared resources. And I think what we're seeing here is actually the attempt to roll back the common understanding of what a library is. I mean, Senator Bahr, what you've described, that's just a bookstore. Every single time you check out a book to read it, you pay for it, that's just a bookstore. And right now what we have are physical libraries where the library purchases a book and it is available to people in that library or in that system where you can send it to other libraries nearby or in the state, and we get to read it. That's the whole point of libraries. And then tech comes in and they're like, haha, we have found a way to make you pay more all the time against the very concept of what libraries are for, which is public resources going to books for people to read for free. And instead what they're doing is screwing over taxpayers on the back end to make us repay for those books all the time. It'd be like if the publishers or the vendors came in and were like, how many times have you checked out The Women? We're gonna take that back. Can you buy this book back from us? That's actual lunacy, and it should be understood to be lunacy here as well. And so I'm really, really grateful to you for bringing this bill to just reestablish the norm of what a library is and what purchasing a book is, and then what lending a book from a library should be. And that should include digital books. They're not some special different thing. I mean, I hear from the publisher that they market and promote and edit all of that is the identical thing that happens in a digital book as a physical book. And so the purchasing and lending shouldn't be different for a physical book than it is for a digital book. In fact, you would think that maybe the digital book would be cheaper because it's not materials. So anyway, I really appreciate, Senator Kunesh, you bringing this bill and just kind of bringing us back down to what is a library? And how do we get books? And then what do we do with those books? And that's what this bill seeks to do. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Senator Curran?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Kunesh, so I think I heard a couple statements. One was yours, a free will of commerce. And so your bill doesn't promote the free will of commerce. And that was one of your statements in regards to Senator Bahr's questioning. And it's free will, except for where we don't like it. And where else have we imposed this type of contract or licensure limitation because government wants to purchase a product with different terms and conditions?
Maybe Senator Kunesh?
Mr. Chair, I'll simply, outside of the
Senator Curran?
the horrible alcohol three-tier system that we protect by restrictive licensing all throughout the state.
Right.
Senator Kunesh?
Thank you. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but as my testifier said, we have RFPs all the time that we issue in order to look for the very best price at the very best value. I'm trying to think of, I'm sorry, I can't think of any other but what we're doing is.
Senator Xiong, I'm trying to raise my hand, but I can't figure it out.
Certainly. Senator Curran?
Well, this is an answer to Senator Cran's question.
Okay, Senator Johnson, I will call on you shortly. Senator Curran?
So I think Senator Johnson Stewart has a statement. But at the end of the day, we want to change the terms and conditions. The authors pick a publisher. Authors have choice of publishers, and they know the terms and conditions for which they agree to for the distribution of it. The vendors that provide not the infrastructure, because they can track it more than they ever could, maybe, than the hardcover paper book that they used to get from the library. And with that question, I do have a question. I haven't used the ebook piece of it. What's how simple is it to copy an ebook today? Is it easy to copy an ebook, or is it even possible to copy an ebook while reading?
Senator Johnson, Senator Kunesh, or the testifier?
We'll have Ms. Hawkinson.
Ms. Hawkinson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cran, there are technologies built into the files themselves that are delivered through the app so that it's not possible.
Excellent.
Senator Curran.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and Senator Kunesh, I think the other statement that was made is you're building a coalition of states. I think if you were you should build a coalition of states from a procurement, you already said the largest, from a purchasing perspective. And so you should be able to negotiate those things and build a coalition. But your coalition isn't about using your retail power, your purchasing strength. You want to build a coalition to change that free market of commerce for the benefit of your coalition. And I think you need to bring and do it through the purchasing power. I understand the balance, but at the same time, there's a cost, and everybody who in the publishing stream, they could build another network, right? You go out and try to get the publishers to do something different, but they haven't. And so in their business model, it makes sense for them and for us. I don't know that we should contractually change it because the unintended consequences are always worse than the intended. And so I don't think I can support it in its current form. Thank you.
Can we go to Senator
Yes.
Johnson Stewart?
Go ahead.
Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Cran and others. I just wanted to offer up that at the university level, we use ebooks I would say now it's probably 90% of the curriculum that we use right now is ebooks. And the system at the university level couldn't be more different. It is set up to be cheaper to use an ebook than to use a hard book. It is the licensing. Once you access the ebook, to my knowledge, you can have it forever. And so I guess I don't have a huge amount of data as to how those licenses are negotiated, but if you think of how many books a university goes through, and yes, there is purchasing power there, but Senator Cran, to your question, I'm suspecting that there is a model by which public owners negotiate to get a much better deal. This situation with ebooks, I check out ebooks from the library all the time. It is so maddening because they expire. I haven't figured out a way to print them other than printing a screen, but that's ridiculous. It is insane that I have 50 Audible books that I have purchased and I own, and yet the library pays more and has less use of them. But to answer your question, we do this at the university all the time, where students get an ebook and it's theirs forever. So the model exists.
Senator Kunesh.
I just wanted to recognize also that our vendor, there really is only one vendor, and so in essence, it's a monopoly, and the opportunity that to renegotiate or negotiate is next to impossible, and this is an opportunity. Just remember, these are taxpayer dollars that are going out, not only in our schools, and we are struggling so hard to find ways to not only get those resources to our students and to our teachers, but also to pay for everything else that it costs to educate our students. And this is an opportunity that I see as a way to be able to get those dollars into the right way in education in our public libraries. Counties can't afford this either. Counties support this bill. We have bipartisan support, and I would ask all of you to please support this bill.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this question's probably best for Ms. Hawkins. You may have answered this in what your presentation was, but I'll ask directly to make sure I was following and understand this. What's keeping you today from being able to just outright purchase a license? Is it vendor rules? Is it publisher rules? Is it some federal copyright law? Like, what's the prohibition in this system that's keeping you from being able to do that like you might do a physical book?
Ms. Hawkins.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator Matthews, it's where the publishers are offering it to us through the vendor. So the publishers are negotiating with the vendor for what they can offer it to us at. So there are some publishers, like I said, that are typically, self-published authors, some independent publishers that do offer us perpetual use licenses, meaning we, in theory, or in practicality, we buy it and we have a perpetual license. We get to keep it forever and keep circulating it. That's not true of the big 5 publishers, which dominate the market. Those are the ones that are willing to sell it to the vendor, to license it to us at those metered access where they're expiring by time or checkout.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if it's in the publisher-vendor contract, then it's either got to be an ask of the vendor or it's got to be an ask of the publisher. Do we know which it is? I guess it could be for either one here.
Mr. Hill.
Yes, Chair. Senator Matthews. So the part of the challenge that the publishers have, and when bringing, especially if you're bringing bestsellers to the marketplace, we have to also, libraries are a really important part of the ecosystem for us. They're a very important customer, but so are our bookstores. And so if we give an unlimited number of new release licenses to bookstores to libraries, who then can provide unlimited access for free, that begins to cannibalize our bookstores. People then don't go to the bookstore to buy the book, and that is one of the challenges here. We are trying to balance the needs of many customers here. And that creates part of the challenge. And so that is one of the reasons why, we do make new releases available online the same day they're available in a bookstore. But we have to be very sensitive to making sure that we also recognize the other business partners and customers that we have in the marketplace.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Matthew.
And I appreciate that and I get that. I'm still don't think that necessarily applies to what I'm asking for, because I've seen this before. If you go check a library app for a physical copy of the hottest book that just came off the press, and you click on it, and you're usually told, hey, you're number 297 on the waiting list, or something, it has to circulate its way down to you. I suspect there could be a similar system set up here, but there's still some hiccup, like what Senator Bahr is like. It feels like we have the libraries up one side of the mountain and the authors and publishers up the other side of the mountain, and we're not quite getting over the top of the mountain here in this whole conversation. And Senator Johnson Stewart's comment about the university systems probably tells me that there's a way to figure out whether it's a new vendor that has to come on the market. I'm guessing the one vendor doesn't have a legal statutory monopoly. It might just happen to be the only one that's in existence today, but there's got to be a way that the market could produce a better delivery system than in that case, if this one's being so unwieldy that we can't easily get the product to the consumers. I'm open to Mr. Hill's thoughts and response.
Mr. Hill.
Chair, Senator Matthews, the one thing I wanted to point out, it is my understanding when looking at the university system, is it is very similar to what you and I would do as a consumer. If you and I go online and purchase an ebook online or an audiobook online, Senator Bahr and I had this conversation yesterday. He has a wonderful, more than 400-piece digital collection of books, but when you purchase it, you own it. But you're not allowed to share it. You're not allowed to give it to others. You're not allowed to have unlimited access to everyone else for that book. And so it's my understanding that's how the university system works. So they are, as I mentioned, we give a reduced licensing fee to the libraries with the understanding that, it can be used 26 times. At the end of the 26, you need to renew. When you do that, the cost for the library for the bestseller that they demonstrated last week is about $2.11 per license, where if you and I went to purchase it, it's somewhere between $10 and $15. But then you own it. And as my understanding, that's how the university system, when you purchase online a textbook, you then own it and it goes into your library.
Thank you. Any other questions, Senator Matthews?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it feels like there's a three-legged stool in this picture and we only have two legs of the stool telling us their perspective on this. And I think that's some of the difficulty with this. So, I totally get the problem. And like I said, I don't know why there's only one vendor in this ecosystem for this, and whether the market can fix that or correct that. That usually tends to be what helps get better delivery of products to consumers. And I guess we'll see if this gets enacted and it does end up throttling the number of digital licenses that become available to libraries. Then what are we going to be doing, coming back in a future session asking how we fix that? I'm not even sure what I would do voting on this bill right now, because I see two sides of two problems, but there's something still not fully connected in this whole situation. What's the path of this bill, Mr. Chair?
Senator Kunesh, where would you like this to go?
I think this is set to go back to education finance.
Education finance. Senator Mayquay, then Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hill, did I hear correctly? Are you saying that libraries are cannibalizing bookstores?
Ms. Hawkins.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Chair, Senator, What I said was if you allow an unlimited number of free books into the marketplace on the day that a new release takes place, that will have the impact of cannibalizing bookstores.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hill, is there anything in here that requires unlimited day of publishing new releases?
Mr. Hill or Ms.?
Mr. Chair, Senator, there are conditions that they would like to place on the vendors. Let me find my, I think it's under the contract requirements restriction number 2, restrict the number of times the library may loan any electronic library material over the course of the contract. Number 3 limits the number of electronic literary material licenses the library may purchase.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Hill, that doesn't say that one license is unlimited. It just says if you purchase one, then they have it, like physical books.
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Chair, Senator, our concern is, as I was saying, we have a delicate balance here between the ecosystem. Libraries are a really important customer of ours, but so are bookstores. And bookstores, and this is one of the reasons why the bookstores, their association has concerns with this legislation, is certainly the market is moving towards a digital publications are becoming more and more popular. You don't have to go to the bookstore, you don't have to go to the library, there's not that friction of going to get your copy. If libraries all of a sudden have unlimited numbers of new releases, that has an impact on people then not necessarily going to the bookstore to purchase the book. And that is a concern of the publishers and our partners.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Mr. Hill, I'm still confused because this doesn't say unlimited new releases. So here's what I'm imagining, and maybe I can ask Ms. Hawkins to tell me if I'm right here. When a library purchases 2 new releases, physical copies, they put those in the library, and for time immemorial, 2 different people, or I guess 1, can check out those 2 books. Similarly, the license for the digital ebook would be able to be to 2 people at any given time, and they could then check that out for time immemorial. So at what point did I describe unlimited on day 1? It's 2 people until 2 people are done reading it, and then it goes to the next 2 people. It's just they don't have to keep rebuying the book after 26 people have read it.
Ms. Hawkins.
Mr. Chair, Senator, correct. That's exactly what we're asking for, is that we are licensed or sold digital materials in the same way we've been accessing and circulating physical materials for centuries.
Senator McQuaid. Mr. Hill.
Mr. Chair, I would just respond again under the subdivision 3 and the contract requirements. This bill would prohibit contracts being put in place that restrict the library from performing customary operational or lending functions. That is what this is saying. How I'm reading that is you want to give them unlimited ability to make that available. That is one of our concerns.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then I'm so glad to be able to put this at rest for you, Mr. Hill. So it's not that they have unlimited number of people at one time who can check it out. It's that once they purchase it, they have purchased it. And for however many people can read it at one time, that's how many people can read it at that time forever. So I hope maybe that helps, because when you have a physical book, you can lend it to another library, you can send it to a person. Similarly here, they would like to be able to lend it to another library system. I think it would be very helpful if you could understand this bill to be putting the same parameters around digital books as we have around physical books and nothing more.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still trying to figure this bill out. As I've been reading it here, but and I've talked to libraries about this and tried to tried to understand where they were coming from, and I understand there's frustration with, they think the prices are too high or they can't share as many copies as they'd like to, and then we have a bill that comes forward that attempts to place limits on all the libraries. The operative part of the bill is page 3 and 4. After they form out some sort of compact or a threshold of potential customers that represent over 7 million in population, that it limits what libraries can do in the contracts that they can enter into. It's like a standoff. And so, I mean, what happens, Senator Kunesh, when you know, you've got this in law and, you know, Mr. Hill's, you know, the people hiring him say, you know what, okay, the market's going to go somewhere else. And we're going to focus. The reality is the market will outrun any manipulation you try to do in government here, and this will become a futile activity. So I don't know that this is a good way to do it. I mean, libraries want their stuff cheaper and they want to make it more available to more people, and people want stuff free. They always do. Senator Bahr pays for his. Senator Johnson Stewart pays for hers. But others want it free, and we seem to be having law enacted here to try to make sure that as many people get it for free as possible at the expense of the authors and the publisher and the middleman, the vendor here. What happens when there's a standoff and you know, I'm looking at page 3 and 4. I mean, you say no libraries in the state can enter into any contracts that have any of these elements in them. So what happens when the vendors stand up and say, you know what, we're going to Iowa with our stuff and we're going to focus on bookstores and libraries down there because they don't do this to us? What happens then?
Senator Kunesh or Ms. Hawkins?
I guess that's a risk or a chance that we're going to have to take. We can't wait for a new vendor to appear on the market and provide these kind of contracts and these services. Right now, the taxpayer dollars are going to subsidize these publishers and these vendors and not providing the services that we that we expect from our libraries. I mean, our government has an obligation to libraries in order to ensure free, equitable access to information and resource and reading materials. I mean, we're spending millions of dollars in our schools to improve literacy. And so much of that money that goes into our school is either not going into providing books and access to resources because they cost so much. And so we're looking for the ability and the fairness of being able to negotiate a really fair price. I mean, it's basically a monopoly. And you know, it's a crying shame. It's a crying shame to hold libraries, both public and school and other libraries, at the hand of publishers. I know the name of the game is to make as much money as you can, but is that really the best use of our taxpayer dollars when we can't even negotiate that?
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator Kunesh. I mean, we still then ask kind of the operational question here. When there's a standoff and the publisher goes somewhere else, what are the libraries going to do? And then how many are they going to serve with digital copies at that time? Mm-hmm. It's somewhere south of 1. It's probably 0. But what we have here is the function of libraries has been, and the model they've operated in over time, is to have a book, a physical book. And people come in and they can review it over and over and over again. It goes back on the shelf, then somebody else takes it off and they review the book. And we almost are thinking, and I hear your discussion, you believe that those same people are entitled to a digital version that they can take home with them. And I think that's where the disjointed part of this is, or that's where kind of the separation between maybe reality and what we hope we can do with this bill is. Because I don't see what happens when, if I'm the publisher and the vendor, I say, you know what, I'll spend my marketing resources somewhere else because Minnesota's standing out there on their own and they are directing us with this very restrictive law, and we can't do it anymore. But the question remains, what happens then? What do we do then when there's 0 digital copies for people? Senator Kunesh, or
Ms. Hawkins.
Senator, Ms.
Hawkins.
Hawkins.
Ms. Hawkins, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I just want to reiterate that what we said before, that we don't want these ebooks, we're not asking for them for free, we're asking them for fair pricing. And I would just say that, you know, the vendors, the publishers, they can choose to see this as a threat to their business, or they can see it as an opportunity to do more. We want to purchase from the vendors we like, we want to purchase from the publishers we like, from the authors we like. It's in the best interest of all of them to have a healthy marketplace for ebooks. Libraries are the largest consumers, book consumers nationally. So if they're not willing to sell to us digitally, it could have, you know, repercussions physically as in the physical materials as well. You know, they're professing to believing in libraries. The current marketplace is not sustainable for their customers. They might stop, some of them might stop selling to us, but the vendors, really the vendor, can't make money without us. We are their only customer. Libraries are. So if more and more libraries are doing this, another one is going to come in to take the place of that sole vendor, right? We totally expect that might happen. This legislation can create more opportunity, potentially, for more choice in the marketplace. Really, we just think, we acknowledge that we're taking a risk. We don't think anything changes without discomfort. We're willing to challenge the status quo and let the publishers and the vendors react on that. Because quite frankly, just the current model of lending is not sustainable to libraries as it is. We do also have at least one example historically of a vendor who was holding back titles, a publisher who was holding back titles from the library market for the first period of time that they were available. Libraries stopped purchasing those titles in digital and print, and it coincided with COVID, but that publisher did come back around and is now reselling to libraries on release date. So there is some historical precedent already of libraries working and publishers responding in this sphere.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You know, I still don't see where this goes. I mean, it is risky. You're basically doing a standoff. If I'm the publisher, I'm going to say I'm going to go to Iowa and California and other places that aren't doing this. And so the vendor gets stuck out there without any business. You know, they'll go to other vendors in other states that don't have this. And our libraries will be left out in the cold. Maybe your best thing is to go back to the model of a book, a physical book, and leave the digital stuff up to the marketplace and not try to manipulate that around this. This is risky, and I don't think it's a super good solution. As a matter of fact, the bill's written to really encourage any further disagreement or friction that handles around this to go to court. Look at the provision at 4.7 and 4.8. Can't be enforced anywhere other than going to court, right in the bill.
Yep.
So I don't know how much that's going to cost, Mr. Chair. Very risky bill. I don't think it's a good approach. I do think it's unrealistic for us as a state to promise everything to everybody. And I think that's what we're doing by trying to continue to promise them. We're going to give them free digital copies of stuff that they can take all over the world with them. The libraries are there. They can get a copy of the book there. And I don't know how, I could ask how many libraries in the state. There's hundreds or probably thousands of them, when you add them up, they might have to walk a few blocks to get them. That's not the end of the world. You know, so I don't think this bill's really necessary, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Senator Kunesh, final word.
I think we have to give this a fair chance. Our libraries are like bleeding out because of the astronomical amount of money that they are paying in an unfair market. And I ask that you all think about that, and that's that our tax dollars. Senator Drazkowski, if you are concerned about all these free books and that sort of thing, if we are going to be providing ebooks, then it's important that we are able to do it at an affordable rate and not an inflated rate. And so, Chair Xiong, I'd like to take this bill right to the floor if I could.
Okay. Senator McQuaid moves that Senate File 3685 as amended be recommended to pass to be placed on general orders. Roll call being requested. A roll call will be given. Staff will take the roll.
Chair Xiong?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gustafson?
Yes.
Vice Chair McQuaid?
Yes.
Lead Lang? Senator Bahr? No. Senator Złotynski?
Yes.
Senator Drazkowski?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Okay, I think it's fine. Okay. Senator Fateh? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
Yes.
Senator Johnson-Stewart?
Yes.
Senator Corian?
No.
Senator Matthews? Mr. Chair, there are 6 ayes, 3 noes, 1 pass, and 1 excused.
There being 6 ayes and 3 noes, 1 abstention and 1 excused, the motion passes. Senate File 3685, as amended, is recommended to pass and refer to general orders. Thank you. And Senator Kunesh, your next bill, Senate File 3625.
Yes, sir. This is the PELSB, Professional Education Licensing and Standards Board bill, and I do have the A1 amendment. A5 amendment.
A5, yes. Senator Gustafson moves the A5 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The amendment is adopted. Senator Kunesh, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the Professional Educators License and Standards Board bill. It includes training possibilities, professional education licensing and standard board rules, authority to license, terms of license and renewal, some requirements, and Section 8 deals with mental health to amend the renewal requirements to include at least 5 hours of professional development on student mental health and wellness, and then also includes some information technology costs. And I have the director, Yelena Bailey, with me, if you would like to hear from her.
Hello, Director. Welcome to this State and Local Government Committee. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, my name is Dr. Elena Bailey. I'm the Executive Director of PELSB, the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board. As Senator Kunesh shared, this is largely an operational bill that helps us to be more effective in our work. I believe what is before you today is Section 1 of this bill, which would help transfer over the responsibility of the voluntary paraprofessional credential to the Department of Education, and that's simply in alignment with their jurisdiction. They oversee all non-licensed school staff, and we exclusively oversee teachers and licensed teachers in the state of Minnesota. So this is just cleaning up some jurisdictional things, and Section 1 deals with the rulemaking authority, which would be transferred as a part of that work.
Hey, thank you for that. Members, any questions, comments to the bill? Seeing none, Senator Kunesh, any final word for us?
Nope, thank you so much for listening to us.
And this one you're looking to send it to Ed Finance,
Yes,
correct?
this is the one to go to Ed
Okay.
Finance. Yep.
Senator Johnson Stewart moved Senate File 3625 to be recommended to pass and to be placed to Education Finance. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 3625 is recommended to pass and to pass to Education Finance. Thank you, Senator Kunesh. Next up, we have Senator Wiklund, and I'm being told that she is currently on her way here right now. Welcome, Senator Wiklund. You have Senate File 4719. And it looks like there's also an amendment that's coming.
Mr. Chair, yeah, there's a couple amendments. I can describe the bill first, though.
Sure,
and then,
certainly.
And then I can take those up.
All right, Senator Wiklund, it's your bill.
Thank you. Senate File 4719 is a bill that relates to IT and human services systems specifically. This is a bill that I've been working on with the counties and with Minute and DHS and DCYF. Over the past few months, we've been talking about how we need to modernize our IT systems. And many of you have probably heard from the counties about their concerns about impending changes that are coming from federal law changes, and just how they're going to be able to handle the workload without adding a lot of additional people, which is costly and time intensive to do that. So this bill would create a Human Services Systems Steering Committee that is composed of the relevant agencies and counties who administer the systems. And Human Services Systems is defined as any IT systems utilized by counties or the commissioners of Human Service and Children, Youth, and Families. The bill also provides appropriations for two different types of work. It provides an appropriation for some systems focused changes, and then there's another subdivision that is an appropriation for policy focused changes. And all of these items that are within the two, subdivision 1 and subdivision 2, have come from discussions that the counties have been having with, in collaboration with Minute and DHS and DCYF. And they are the high priority items that they feel need to be taken care of before we are faced with implementing new HR1 requirements such as work requirements or the additional redeterminations and changes to the SNAP program. So this particular committee's jurisdiction is more over the steering committee aspect, the section 1 of the bill. And as I mentioned, it would establish this steering committee with members that are coming from Department of Human Services, Children, Youth, and Families, but then there would be 6 members that are appointed jointly by the various county associations. So they felt that by having 6 county members, and then a smaller number subset that would be from agencies. This would give them greater opportunity to have input into how these systems projects are prioritized and what recommendations should come forward next. So that is the underlying bill. In terms of the amendments, I have one amendment that is just adding some clarification, and I think it is.
Looks like there's a A3 and a A6.
Yeah, so the A3 just clarifies that who would be the one responsible for organizing and administering the steering committee, and that would be the
Certainly.
Commissioner of Minute. And then there's an addition to the subdivisions that contain the projects. It just adds a line that says that there could be other projects that came forward from that steering committee besides the ones that are listed out specifically. So that's what the A3 amendment does.
Okay, so we'll move the A3 amendment first. Senator Gustafson moves the A3 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A3 amendment is adopted. Senator Wiklund.
And Mr. Chair, we could talk about the underlying bill, or I can talk about the A6 amendment, if you'd like, either way.
We'll move the A6. And Senator Gustafson moves the A6 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A6 amendment is adopted. Senator Wiklund, to your bill as amended.
Mr. Chair, the addition of the A6, I've consulted with Senator Curran today and had a little bit of discussion about it. This would create a legislative-focused commission that would have more of an oversight role over human services systems development. And this is something that my staff and I have been talking about over the course of this session. It seems like we have a lot of IT projects and we have some plans for IT modernization, but we don't have a real focused legislative group that is sort of tracking these efforts, monitoring them, maybe evaluating, like the duties are stating that would be to evaluate the state supervised county administered approach. It could review how other states procure and administer and delivers human services, and identify areas within our government that we could address through legislation to improve the governance, procurement, and technology structures. So it would be a way to more formally do that. It would be made up of 6 members from the Senate and 6 from the House. And there's some language about the appointment process that is kind of the standard processes for establishing commissions. And then Senator Curran and I have just discussed briefly that we could have some ties to the steering committee, whereby the steering committee could provide updates to this commission as they do their work in terms of the technology recommendations and projects that move forward. So that's what that addition would add to the bill.
Thank you, Senator Wiklund. Members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Wiklund. We've, members, I think a couple $100 million to put aside in 2023. There's been work done, but there needs to be far more focus on and far more legislative oversight, I think, for every facet of it. So the steering team, we see that as a tactical. I think Senator Wiklund did a good job. The short-term, mid-term, long-term. We have to do some things that are probably out of the ordinary to be able to get some tools up very quickly for our counties as it relates to eligibility determination, right, the cycles, and for me personally, I want we need to do those things quickly, but what's the information we can go out and extract, and how much can we automate it in a quick ad hoc environment. Then you get midterm, which is kind of the steering team preparing for the myriad of systems that we have and the best solution. And I think the legislative commission on top of that will help guide. You did, Senator Wiklund talked about all of the levels of oversight, and I'm most concerned about how do we obtain the expert knowledge that our agencies haven't changed their training methodologies to acquire themselves. So we need to be heavily involved in how we decide what the procurement methods are moving forward. And probably something unique that we haven't done is, one, how we invitation to negotiate. I'll explain it later to you if anybody cares. But it'll be a method. I think we should dictate it because it'll be a method which can extract great knowledge and provide the vendor with greater information and the agency of need. And we have multiple agency of need technically from Department of Human Services and thus those that actually use it in the counties, that they'll be better served. And then I think we should deploy a test before we buy. So a lengthy procurement process where we actually test to ensure there's not vaporware and test everything they say they have. So when we actually have a final contract, we have a contract that everybody at the table has had a role. I think the counties, we need to figure out how they have a buy-off or a sign-off on the movement. But we have a contract where our counties will actually receive what they need, and we'll be in a position to protect ourselves and to make sure the contractors deliver in the most efficient manner. And so I think collectively they all will work well together. And so, and again, if anybody wants the other technical details, I'll fill you in whenever you've got insomnia. But with that, I think it's a good bill, and I appreciate everybody's support. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this, Senator Coran. Other members, questions or comments? Senator Wiklund, the final word?
No additional comments. I think Senator Cran added and supplemented what I had to say, so I appreciate the time in your committee.
With that, seeing no further discussion, Senate File 4719 as amended is recommended to pass, and it is being referred to rules. Correct,
That's my
Senator Wiklund? All in favor say aye. Hold on. I am so sorry again. Senator Gustafson moves that Senate File 4719 as amended is recommended to pass and referred to rules. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 4719 as amended is recommended to pass and referred to rules. Thank you, Senator Wiklund. Next up, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger. Senate File 4177. Thank you. Hello, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger. Whenever you're ready, you may begin. It looks like you have an A1 amendment.
Yes, and I would also like to request a very tiny oral amendment to the
Okay.
A1, please.
Would you like to make that
Yes,
amendment?
if it's appropriate,
Okay.
I'm happy to.
Sure.
So the oral amendment to the A1 on line 1.19, replace counties with the word municipalities.
Okay. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves the A1 amendment as orally amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The amendment is adopted. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, to your bill, as amended.
Okay, well, that was just the amendment to the A1.
Certainly.
I can go through the A1 if you like.
We adopted them together.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Okay,
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
thank you. I need to find my other notes now. Okay. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. This is a bill from the Secretary of State, And I just kind of want to go through it a little bit because we've added, the A1 has added sections 1 and 2. And this updates the titles of individuals the Secretary of State can appoint. It mirrors what we do for the state auditor's language. It does not expand the number of individuals in the office. It also includes language to update address information included in the legislative manual. We know it lovingly as the Blue Book. Currently, whole residential addresses are required to be included for officials, but the amendment changes the requirement to instead include the municipality what the individual resides in. After that, it adjusts the number of Blue Books that they are required to print based on the current demand for the book. So I think this will be good for decreasing any government waste with a bunch of books hanging around that never get used. Overall, the bill closes a few gaps, makes technical changes to align current statute with current practices. So that's the new stuff. And then if you're looking at the original bill, the sections 1 and 2 are now going to get bumped down to number 3 and 4. They also make targeted practical updates to improve the integrity and accuracy of the state's business filing system. It allows the Secretary of State the authority to take action when a business filing is submitted with a payment that is later rejected or dishonored. In those cases, the office may terminate the entity or move it to an inactive status, helping protect against potentially fraudulent activity. Businesses can be reinstated once that outstanding payment is resolved, ensuring a balanced approach that promotes accountability and fairness. And then lastly, the new Section 4. The bill updates statute to reflect current processes for filing and transmitting unemployment insurance deed liens. Basically, there's just a low volume of these types of liens that an electronic filing system is not necessary, and the system they have in place is working well. So, with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger. Members, any other questions or comments? Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, or maybe the Secretary of State's office, real quick with the change you made in the amendment to where municipalities of officials reside, since this is more applicable in my area and further north for rural members, if they are residing in a rural area outside of city boundaries, what's the plan at that point? List the city that their mailing address is associated with, or what's going to be the plan?
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger or the testifier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Matthews. We included the word municipality. Oh, excuse me, Nicole Freeman from the Office of the Secretary of State. Thank you. I'm thinking I'm in Elections Committee, where I might have already introduced myself, so thank you. We included the word municipalities, so it could include the city or the township where the person might reside. I haven't considered what it would say if it was an unorganized township. So I think in that situation, we would most likely work with the individual member to come to an agreement of what the right jurisdiction would be to list.
Okay. All right, Senator Matthews, any follow-up? Any other questions or comments, Senator Drazkowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, maybe Ms. Freeman, you can tell us 1.5 to 1.10 of the amendment. What are you doing there in your office? What is that?
To the testifier?
Thank you, Chair and Senator. So here we're just updating the titles of the folks that the Secretary can appoint. You'll note on lines 1.7 of the amendment, he currently can appoint a chief clerk, recording clerk, and a stenographer. And while a lot of our work revolves around recording things, and we are the official document keeper of the state, we don't currently employ a stenographer, and I don't think have for several decades. And so we're just looking to update the titles of the individuals that the Secretary can appoint. But as it states, we're not increasing or changing the complement that the Secretary could appoint.
Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm curious, what does, so, and at pleasure dismiss 2 additional deputies? What does that mean? I mean, to me, dismiss means relieve them of duty. Does that mean something different here?
To the testifier.
Thank you, Chair and Senator. As I said, this language we took from what the state auditor is included, what the state auditor's language reads as well. And what at the pleasure to dismiss means is that they serve at the pleasure of the Secretary. So the Secretary can appoint these folks. And then they serve at the pleasure, as opposed to being a a union represented employee or with some other status.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, final word.
No, like I said, I appreciate kind of the working with the Secretary of State, working with staff to get this all kind of in a great shape. It reduces waste, it increases efficiency, and updates us to the times.
All right, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves Senate File 4177 as amended to be recommended to pass and to be placed on general orders. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 4177 as amended is recommended to pass and placed on general orders. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, is there one more? 4769. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. To your bill.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, members. This one is now 4769. I also have another oral amendment that I was working with Senate Council on to the A1 amendment. So I'm assuming, again, we can kind of same procedure, do the oral amendment, same time as the original.
Did you say there's an A1 amendment?
Yes.
Okay, I think it's being passed out right now.
Thank you.
Would you like to describe the A1 amendment and the oral amendment then?
Sure. The A1 amendment is a collaborative effort with the MMB Attorney General's Office and then the Minnesotans for Open Government to look at some practices where the Attorney General's involved in a lawsuit. The state agencies are not really a party to it, but we need to clean up the language to make sure that that is clear.
Okay, and then so the oral amendment to that, or?
Yes.
So that's everything together then?
I have not brought up the oral amendment yet.
Okay, and we could all, Ms. James?
I'm looking for it, but you maybe have it.
Okay, would you like to go through the oral
Yes, I can
amendment?
give it a shot, and Ms. James can help me if I mess up. Okay. So the first change would be line 1.3. This should actually reside in chapter 15.171. So replace 8.50 with 15.171. The next one is line 1.11. It's a grammatical change. It should say apply in the singular form, not applies. Line 1.15, replace the word litigation with action. And finally, line 1.21, strike the word actually.
All right, Ms. James, is there anything else? She got it right. Okay, all right, sounds good. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves the A1 amendment as orally amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The amendment as orally amended is adopted. To the testifier? Or Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, you want to go over the rest of the bill as amended?
Yes. Thank you very much. So this is a delete all. So as amended, this recognizes that as the state's chief legal officer, the Attorney General serves many different functions. One is to provide legal representation on behalf of state agencies, boards, and commissions when they require representation in state or federal court or in administrative hearings. Another role they do is fulfill is defending the rights of the people of Minnesota in matters such as enforcing consumer protection laws, antitrust, and other civil actions. This bill adds a new section of law to clarify that when the Attorney General brings a civil enforcement action on behalf of the people of Minnesota, state agencies are not automatically deemed a party to that action. This really came to a head when the Attorney General joined 41 other states in litigation against Meta related to the design of social media platforms and the impact to children. Meta, in turn, served state agencies in several states with broad discovery requests because state agencies were treated as parties to the court, it was difficult for them to challenge the limits of discovery requests, which would have been an option had the state agencies been correctly treated as non-parties. So you can imagine that in a complex litigation, you have a lot of time and resources. I'm picturing stacks of paper just stacking up. especially due to the Meta's proposed search terms were very broad, hit millions of documents across agencies, which meant that each agency was then engaged in extensive negotiations to reduce the number of documents, collectively required to view over 1 million records. So states that have had laws in place to clarify the role of their attorney general and their status as counsel for agencies were exempted from having their agencies subject to this type of discovery. And this bill is modeled after those states, particularly South Carolina and Ohio. So like I said, this is kind of another bill that just makes sure that we are being efficient and effective with our government. We're avoiding government waste and would appreciate your support.
All right, thank you. With that, go to the testifier. If you'd like to add anything.
I think he's just here for questions.
Okay, certainly. Members' questions or comments to the bill? Senator May-Quade? Senator Gustafson or Drazkowski, did you have a question? Senator May-Quade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, for bringing this. I just want to state very clearly on the record that Meta is having the week that it deserves, and it is absolutely obscene that a big tech company that is found liable in 2 different states for harming children, and potentially soon here and with 45 other states in this country, is subjecting now the citizens of Minnesota to these ridiculous discovery requests. And I'm not surprised based on their leadership, how they operate, how they've designed all their products. But I just, we are spending time on deadline day to pass a law we shouldn't have to pass. We haven't needed to in the entire existence of this state until Meta was sued for harming our children. So thank you for bringing this, and I'll gleefully be voting for it.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at the bill 1.16 through 1.23. It looks like we are creating policy that that records of different departments are in law not discoverable and not in the possession, custody, or control of the Attorney General, to try to create separation or maybe the ability to withhold information, I'm guessing in lawsuits, or maybe the department representative can tell us more, but it looks like it makes us less forthcoming as a state in these proceedings. So I'm curious what's happening here.
General Counsel, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And for the record, my name is Chris McNulty. I am General Counsel for Minnesota Management and Budget. And I just wish to emphasize that the sole purpose of this bill is not to restrict access to records at the agencies. The sole purpose of this bill is simply to preserve state agency resources and taxpayer dollars by limiting their agency's exposure to overly broad discovery requests when they are not the party to the lawsuit. So in an example, what happened in Meta, the court determined that different state agencies should be considered parties to the lawsuit and therefore subject to more broad and onerous discovery requests that are typical when you are a party to the lawsuit. What this simply says is that state agencies are not automatically presumed to be a party to the lawsuit and subject to that level of onerous discovery, but their records still would be subject to third-party discovery, which is commonly used in many lawsuits. So through subpoena requests, interrogatories, et cetera, records at an agency would still be accessible to litigants, but they would have to go through the typical process of a third-party discovery process.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So do we know how much this has cost us? I don't, it seems to me we're limiting access to government information when we're party of a lawsuit here, and I don't like that. I like our state to be forthcoming and open, and this appears to be closed. And saying that you have to go through and actually get a subpoena in order to get this stuff, where maybe in the past you have not. And then the other question is, how many other states are doing it this way, have these two particular provisions? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger mentioned Ohio and South Carolina. Are they the only 2 states that do this, or how many are doing it? So 2-part question.
Mr. McNulty?
Thank you, Chair. So just for some information on the level of burden, I guess, the meta request put on the state. So 7 state Minnesota agencies, DHS, MDE, MMB, DEED, MDH, OHE, and Commerce are subject to Meta's party discovery requests. Commerce and OE were removed early on in the process, but it still required agency time and effort to establish they did not have sufficient relevant information. Meta put forth 22 requests for production of documents to the agencies, and many included several extensive subparts. And Meta used extensive, incredibly broad search terms. And just for context from MMB's standpoint, Meta's proposed search terms produced almost 30,000 hits for MMB records. The Attorney General went back and proposed amended search terms, and that resulted in 2,500 to 3,000 hits. And this alone, just at MMB, required one staff attorney to spend over 100 hours working on the discovery requests, reviewing files, negotiating search terms and scope of discovery requests, and meeting with the Attorney General's office between roughly July 2024 and April 2025. In addition to their own time, attorneys at MMB are required to meet with between 10 and 12 identified staff who could plausibly have records, quote, related to the impact of social media use by youth, and providing counsel to staff on interrogatory responses. Other agencies were required to do even a greater amount of work. DHS, for instance, DHS staff were ultimately required to review 662,000 documents. The Department of Education was required to review 454,000 documents, and even DEED, which had almost no responsive documents, reviewed about 16,000. To answer your second part of your question, there were many states, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. If you wish, we do have representatives in the Attorney General's office here who might have that specific information, but ultimately, several states who already had language in their laws that differentiated the role of an Attorney General between representing the states as state agencies as clients versus bringing forth litigation on behalf of the state in a consumer protection action. There were several. I don't have the specific number, but it was certainly more than South Carolina and Ohio.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was talking with counsel and trying to look at, so I still just struggle with this generally. I mean, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen, and that's one thing that I think about here. If you're an individual out there that wants to, that is in a dispute with the state, and this seems to me to be a just make the mountain much more bigger for a small individual or small business or somebody like that to scale. Now, I understand you had, I'm not up to speed on what happened with the Meta lawsuit. You were talking about it, but they've got a lot of resources, and so then they made us give up a lot of resources to get their data. That's kind of what I gathered from what you had to say. In talking with counsel, maybe some additional clarity, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, might be if we went on 1.17 and inserted after the word sought and before the word in, if we inserted the words by the party adverse to the state, it might make it a little more clear. I don't know that I guess I'll continue to think about this, but I'd offer that as an amendment, an oral amendment to the adopted oral amendment, Mr. Chair, to make it more clear if that is what the author intended. I think she may have.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, Mr. McNulty. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Just wanted to make extra sure. Yes, I'd be amenable to that.
Senator Drazkowski.
Yes, I would move that, Mr. Chair, that between the words sought and in on line 1.17, we insert the words by the party adverse to the state.
Senator Drazkowski moves the oral amendment. All in favor of the oral amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The oral amendment is adopted. Senator Drazkowski, any follow-up questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will follow this more as this bill moves forward, Senator, but I don't have really a lot of way to analyze this right now, but it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like we are providing less access to the citizen in our government, and our government becomes larger and provides a harder time for the small citizen to get justice in situations where the government does them wrong. Because of that, I struggle with 1.16 through 1.23. Maybe there's a better answer than this language, I don't know. I understand that there's some fresh wound that government's got. I'm sensitive to the taxpayer dollars for sure, but I worry about John Q. Citizen out there that doesn't have the resources that Meta had, that now the mountain's 10 times bigger for them to be able to participate as a litigant against the government. That's what I worry about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator McQuaid, then Senator Matthews, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator McQuaid.
And Senator Drazkowski, we share a passion for government transparency, so I want to be really clear about what this bill does. If you look on 1.5 of the DE of the A1, when the Attorney General institutes a civil enforcement action on behalf of the state. So that is the only time any of the conditions apply. And then if you go to 1.10 and 1.11, when the Attorney General institutes a civil law enforcement action on behalf of the state, the following applies. And so the following apply to the oral amendment. So this isn't actually about what is available to citizens. It's not what's available to Jane Q. Public. This is what is available to entities we are suing, the state is suing for consumer protection violations. And often it's large corporations, 3M for poisoning the water, big tobacco. And because they have way more money than the state, they often then will bury the state in over ridiculous requests for data. So, you were suing big tobacco, and instead of being like, okay, well, we want some health department records, or we want some DHS records to see how many Medicaid claims, they'll say, actually, we would love some Office of Higher Education numbers. For what? We don't know. It doesn't matter. But they bury the state in those requests to make us spend a lot of taxpayer dollars as punishment for filing the lawsuit against them for harming the citizens of Minnesota. So this bill in front of you only applies when the Attorney General is suing another entity on behalf of the state, and it's saying that the whole state government and every agency in it isn't suing. It's the state of Minnesota and then any identified parties. And of course, they would be subject to discovery requests or if they have subpoenas for other agencies, but it's saying that the whole state government isn't open for discovery just because the state of Minnesota is suing a large corporation for violating our consumer rights. So that's what this bill is. It's not about citizens and their availability to data.
Senator Matthews. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Senator McQuaid. But what, Senator McQuaid, when they come to sue you or they come to sue McQuaid LLC, then what? Then can you access information in the Department of Natural Resources that you need to access much more readily than rather than trying to go or needing to go through these additional barriers? So that's what I'm looking at. This doesn't say that it's, the big ugly corporation that, that you loathe. It could be you, or it could be one of your constituents, or one of their small businesses that the Attorney General is suing. There's not a limit to the size and scale here.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, is this bill going to judiciary?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to hear that because I think some of the questions I have are better answered there. Probably for the testifier, one of my questions is, in this scenario, who is the entity that you can get discovery from? Like, I'm looking at this going, how can you say that we want to be a party but can't be treated like a party? Or then who is eligible under the language that you've presented here?
Mr. McNulty.
Thank you, Chair. So in section 3, it does specify, and it contemplates the idea that all of the records that the Attorney General's office has collected from the agencies that might be relevant to the litigation would be discoverable in through party discovery. And so, for instance, if the Attorney General's office has collected all this information and they are in the possession and they are actually collected for the purposes of the lawsuit, then that would be discoverable through party discovery. It's only the records that the Attorney General has not collected to bring forth the lawsuit or defend the lawsuit that are at the other agencies that this just says, well, you don't automatically get access to those through party discovery because the DNR, say, isn't a party to the lawsuit. They might be a state agency that from time to time uses the Attorney General's office as their attorney, but in this action, they're not. They're not to be considered a party because the party bringing the lawsuit is the Attorney General's office on behalf of the state of Minnesota.
Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Matthews.
But isn't it true that just for a general legal principles that a party initiating a lawsuit only does it based on materials and documents that they feel are beneficial to their cause and not necessarily on the other documents that might be contrary or in opposition to their cause?
Mr. McNulty.
Well, I think that, you know, the Attorney General's office might still be in possession of documents that might not necessarily be beneficial to their cause in the course of collecting information to bring the lawsuit. If you do have questions, again, about the practice of the Attorney General's office and that aspect, we do have representatives from their office here.
I encourage that discussion to take place in judiciary. I think that might be the more appropriate place.
Yep, Mr. Chair.
Senator Matthews.
I do appreciate that. I'm raising some of the same questions in reading through this based on what's that mean and what, you know, we can name an example and say, oh, we didn't like how this happened, but it sounded like the correct procedures then went through of they had to argue and negotiate over what the limitations actually were that were going to be relevant to the case. And we can have a case today where some people may have decided who they think a good guy and a bad guy is in this particular case. But sometime down the road, the shoe is likely going to be on the other foot. And we need a universal standard of how you can adequately access our justice system, no matter what side of that equation you're coming from. And I'm just not seeing that with how this bill is getting presented here. And so I know we've got a recent example we can point to, but this definitely needs to be heavily weighted out. And I guess I'm not ready to give it a yes vote with what I'm reading today.
Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments before I hand it off to final word? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thank you. I totally appreciate your questions and concerns. I will say that as someone who has had to do discovery requests in my time at the crime lab, what was important about those discovery requests is that they were very narrow focused. They were very narrowly focused to the examinations done, the prosecutorial needs or the defense needs, and we were able to do those efficiently and effectively. Where my concern lies and where this bill comes in is when these superfluous, unrelated discovery requests come in because they're abusing the system to say, oh, we have all of these agencies that are a part of the state that may not have anything to do with the actual litigation going forward, but then the defense discovery are coming in and basically saying, we want all of this information from these unrelated entities that are under the state. So that is why I'm glad that this bill was done in collaboration with the Minnesotans for Open Government to make sure that we're keeping it narrowly focused to get the information through the discovery process that we need, but also allowing it to do it without abusing the system to get superfluous information. So.
Seeing no further discussion, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves Senate File 4769 as amended to be recommended to pass and refer to judiciary. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 4769 is recommended to pass and referred to judiciary. Thank you, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger. Next up, Senator Gustafson, Senate File 4874. And Senator Gustafson, looks like you also have an amendment, correct? I think it might be an A2 amendment. It's being passed out right now.
Okay. I'm sorry, Chair, we're on 4874, is that what you said?
4874.
40, okay,
Yep.
yes.
And as you get settled in there, they're passing it out right now.
Do you want me to start describing the amendment to save time?
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Xiong, and thank you, committee members. The A2 that you're seeing here was, first of all, I should give credit to my co-author, Senator Draheim, who helped with this amendment and would have offered it if he was on the committee, but we're going to use it as an author's amendment now. But I want to thank him for his work on this. But what the A2 does is sets an ownership threshold and control standard. It ensures that the bill targets bad actors instead of small passive investors. That's why you'll see at least 10% of the ownership or control over management or contracting decisions. It does a look-back period of 10 years, permanent prohibition after a repeat occurrence, 2 or more occurrences, includes persons convicted of conspiracy and attempt of these crimes in the prohibition, and adds Minnesota state colleges and universities since they are included in the definition of agency in Chapter 16C, and it does a little bit of language cleanup too. So thank you to Council and thank you to Senator Draheim for putting this together for us.
All right, would you like to move the amendment then? Senator Gustafson moves the A2 amendment. All those in favor of the A2 amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed? The amendment is adopted. Senator Gustafson, to your bill.
Thank you again, Chair Xiong. So SF 4874 would prohibit a state agency from entering into a contract to procure goods and services with a company whose owner has a fraud-related conviction or false claims finding. The goal is simple. If you commit fraud, you should not be eligible for taxpayer-funded contracts. The bill will help ensure that bad actors can't take advantage of state contracts. And that is the bill. No testifiers.
Thank you. Members, any questions or comments? Senator Mayquade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gustafson, does this also apply to people who have been pardoned for committing fraud?
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Senator, or Chair Xiong and Senator Mayquade. It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine if they've been found, if they've been pardoned or, I don't know. That's something to consider. Would be open to amendment on a future stop.
Senator Mayquade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Gustafson. Yes, just in the human services world, there's been a raft of pardons for Medicaid fraud, and this is a really good way to keep people out, but if they've been pardoned and somehow that doesn't count, I would be concerned about that. So I would love to work with you and do an amendment at a future stop.
Thank you for that. Senator Gustafson.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's interesting to think about. So if somebody has been convicted and then pardoned, that doesn't mean that they weren't convicted and that they didn't commit the crime. That means that an elected official let them off the hook. So let's think about that. I don't know that that's meritorious in this case. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator, any other questions or comments? Senator Gustafson, the final word?
No, that's it. That's the bill.
Senator Gustafson recommends Senate File 4874 to be recommended to pass, as amended, to be recommended to pass and to be placed on general orders. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 4874 is recommended to pass and placed on general orders. Senator Gustafson, your next bill, Senate File 4889.
Thank you, Chair Xiong. Thank you, committee members. This is asking for support for Senate File 4889. It appropriates $165,000 to AMPERS, the Association of Minnesota Public Educational Radio Stations, to help consolidate expenses for their member stations to help offset the millions of lost in recent federal funding cuts. In addition, it reduces the station's FTE eligibility requirements from 2 full-time equivalents to 1.5 to ensure the smaller stations continue to qualify for state funding. At this, in this time of advocacy, it is increasingly important to support our smaller community radio stations, which represent many of the rural areas that a lot of you at the table represent as well. I, in particular, used to work at Jazz 88 back in my radio days. It is an important and free public service that a lot of people in communities rely on. And I know when I worked at Jazz 88 in North Minneapolis, part of my time there was just on my own as a broadcaster, but part of my time was also there to teach young people in North Minneapolis how to pursue a job or an occupation in radio as well. So they serve functions like this in their communities. They're very important. We all have them in our communities, whether you know it or not, and they're just vital to our public service.
Great, thank you. And a testifier here, Joel Glazer. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Joel Glazer, and I am the president and CEO of AMPERS, which is the Association of Minnesota Public Educational Radio Stations. We do support 17 different smaller community radio stations around the state of Minnesota. They go up as far north as the Canadian border to Grand Marais, Thief River Falls, down to Winona, Mankato, and just about everything in between. We are not affiliated with Minnesota Public Radio or Twin Cities Public Television, nor do we receive funding from NPR or TPT. As Senator Gustafson mentioned, we did get hit hard by the federal cuts. Collectively, we lost $3.5 million. For some of the stations, that is as much as half of their operating budget. These cuts disproportionately impacted the native stations as well as our smaller stations in greater Minnesota. I will tell you, when the cuts came down, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised at all. In fact, I spoke at a congressional hearing and said I wasn't surprised because there were so many public radio stations around the country that were going partisan. And that is not the methodology or the approach that we take. Our philosophy is that if you take one dime of state money, that you should be representing all perspectives, and that is the public's airwaves, and we take that very seriously. We amplify all voices across the state, and with that loss of $3.5 million, I would love to sit here and ask for $3.5 million. That's not realistic. But there are two things that we can ask for that are pretty easy. The first one has to do with making sure that our stations remain eligible. Currently on 129D14, a station has to have 2 FTEs. We are asking that that be changed to 1.5 FTEs because we have some stations that with those cuts are getting by with 1.5 staff members. If we don't change that, they will lose, they've already lost their federal, they would also lose their state funding, and they would probably go out of business. So like our station in Thief River Falls, for example, right now is operating at 1.5 FTE. If we don't change 129D14, they lose their state funding. If they lose their state funding, they go dark. If they go dark, they don't come back. So that is our first request. The second is we are asking for an appropriation of $165,000 to consolidate some of the back end. We have been looking to try and consolidate some of the back end for a very long time, but it's extremely difficult because our stations are tribal, and the tribal does not want us doing anything on their back end. Our stations are university. They don't want us doing anything on the back end. But there is one responsibility that is common that we are allowed to touch, and that's getting into a little bit of technicality. It's referred to as traffic. It's putting in the underwriting announcements, the promos, and things like that. That takes, at a station, anywhere between 0.1 and about 0.25 FTE. We can hire one person at AMPERS, pay for that software, and take care of all of that and take that responsibility off of them as a Band-Aid in the meantime. So right now, we are asking simply to adjust 129D14 from 2 to 1.5 FTEs and for an appropriation of $165,000. That is Senate File 4889. I would ask for your support, and I'm available if there are any questions.
Members, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator Bahr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got to the Senator Gustafson here. I got to say this is probably the most modest request I have seen come through this committee yet. So thank you for trying to be as frugal as you can with the taxpayer dollar.
Any other members? Senator Gustafson, the final word.
Nope. Thank you so much for considering.
Seeing no further discussion, Senator Gustafson moves Senate File 4889 to be recommended to pass and referred to Finance. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate File 4889 is recommended to pass and referred to Finance. Next up, we will go to the Omnibus, Senate File 4555, and I will pass the gavel to Senator May-Quade.
Senator Xiong, whenever you are ready. Senator Xiong to Senate File 4555.
Yep, thank you. This is following up from yesterday, presenting Senate File 4555 to help serve this Senate State and Local Government Policy Omnibus Bill. This bill cleans up a variety of statutes, makes needed technical amendments, and allows government at both the state and local levels to operate more efficiently. While this bill is not centered on sweeping new initiatives, it reflects on the ongoing work of this committee to refine statute, address gaps we have identified, and ensure that government operations are clear, functional, and responsive. I'm thankful to all the members and staff who helped put this bill together. And with that, we can turn over to the amendments.
Sure. Senator Xiong, would you like to start with the A5? The A15, that's what I said, the A15. Senator Xiong, to the A15.
Give me a sec here. Is it the A15? Is there a copy of the A15 up there? I think I might have left it in my packet on the desk.
Okay. It looks like the A15 is a delete everything amendment to the A5.
Yes, and I moved the A15 amendment. 15.
Senator Xiong moves the A15 amendment. Senator Xiong, would you like to have discussion on this?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
maybe.
Senator Drazkowski.
Madam Chair, I think you need to move the A5 amendment first and then move to amend that with the A15. Is that what we're doing?
I believe we adopted the A5 yesterday.
Yes.
Senator
I was
Drazkowski.
sleeping, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Ms. James, would you like to walk us through the A15? Is that what you were going to say, Senator Xiong? Ms. James.
Madam Chair and members, the A15 are the Board of Barbers and Board of Cosmetology bills that the committee considered earlier in session, but with any provisions that affected finances removed.
Thank you, Ms. James. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thanks. I was looking through this and I noticed something and I was wondering if I could request an oral amendment.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, state your oral amendment.
Okay, page 12, line 15. I think I talked to you. It's in there? Maybe I'm looking at a wrong copy. Okay. I'm good. Okay.
Continue?
Oh, yes, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to triple check everything. So page 12, line 15, insert the phrase one-year fee after the $100.
Council, would you like to read the amendment?
Madam Chair and members, that's right, on line 12.15, after $100, insert 1-year fee.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, is that your motion?
Yes, please.
Members, all those in favor to the Hemmingsen-Jaeger oral amendment to the A15, say aye. So sorry. Discussion.
Madam Chair, what does that mean? Do we mean one-time fee, or is that an annual fee?
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Of course, now I see what you mean by that. Is it possible to have the boards come up and just kind of clarify that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Please introduce yourself for the record, and you may answer the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jenna Bowl with the Minnesota Board of Cosmetology. On line, excuse me, on line 1216, we did intend to keep one-year fee so as not to make any fiscal impact. But I did miss that when I changed it back. So it makes more sense to add it into after $100 because we have added eyelash technician at the end of line 1216. So right now, we issue military temporary licenses one time for 1 year.
Okay.
Senator Drazkowski.
So it's one time. I'm guessing the original language wasn't clear either. So if it's a one-time fee, I think we should say one time. If it's supposed to be every year, we should say annual. And it sounds like you want it to be one time, right? I think one time is what we're looking for, Madam Chair.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
As long as that doesn't change the scope, that it's a one-time fee for a one-year license.
Senator Drazkowski, so it is an every year fee, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger? Ms. Volk?
It is they can get a military temporary license for 1 year, one time only. So it's both.
I see. Senator Drazkowski.
I think thank you, Madam Chair. I think the way Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger said it is probably the clearest, to say one time for a one-time license. What was it?
1 year.
Oh,
Senator Xiong.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger could restate the entire sentence.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
So it is a one-time fee for a one-year license.
May I ask a clarifying question? Is it a one-time fee for a one-year license that you can only get one time?
Oh, my gosh. Mr. Erickson.
Madam Chair, members, and maybe the testifier can help clarify this, but if the requirements that it be only 1 year and is not renewable for anything more than one time, it may make more sense not to have the phrase 1 year fee here at all. This will just establish a $100 fee for this thing that elsewhere is limited to 1 year, one time. Would that work?
Ms. Volk.
Madam Chair, yes, it is within our rules that it's one time only. So I do believe that would work.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
So does that mean I withdraw my motion?
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger would.
No, I'm asking.
Madam Chair and Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, I think that's correct, because with it stricken here, and if we don't add it in, I think that we could just leave it as the amendment has it.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger withdraws her oral amendment. Members, additional discussion on the A15. Additional amendments to the A15, or is it the A5? A15, thank you. Senator Drazkowski, I was going to say, I don't think y'all are done. Senator Drazkowski.
thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a raft of amendments, and I don't know how many.
I expected nothing less, Senator Drazkowski.
Yes, thank you.
Senator Drazkowski, can we adopt the A15 and then amend it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other discussion on the A15 as A15? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A15 is adopted. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the A16 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A16 amendment. Senator Drazkowski, to your amendment.
So the amendment, thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment addresses, so it's on page 11, if you don't have the amendment in front of you, line 19, 18 and 19 on page 11. And so this relates to yesterday's discussion about the Historical Society. And what it does is and apparently this language has been vetted through, I've been told through the Historical Society and others to be accurate. So this would bring 11, page 19. Okay, this one's coded to the A5, Madam Chair.
That's correct.
So that's the problem. Oh, it is correct? Oh, okay. Oh, I was reading.
Maybe I'm going to state that out loud, Senator Drazkowski. So the A15 inserts after page 24 of the A5 additional articles. So you have the A5 and the A15 now together as the bill. Senator Drazkowski.
Okay, I'm not where you are on the bill, but I'll go through the amendment, Madam Chair. So, thank you. Okay. So what this does is it would reinstate the stricken language that we had yesterday and simply add in, you can see, is the amendment out?
Yes, Senator Drazkowski.
Okay, so everybody's got the amendment. Basically, it takes care of and provides additions of those two categories that were testified to us yesterday. The event center or the one nature site and the local tribe that was involved in the current 10-year lease or the 10-year contract, and then it adds in or local chamber of commerce or local convention and visitors bureau. Those seem to be the ones that are under current consideration with the Historical Society. This would provide what they need, but not yet open it up to anything, the moon and the stars above. Encourage your support.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Senator Xiong.
Yeah, thank you for that, Senator Drazkowski, but I think we had quite the discussion yesterday, but I think I'd like to call Mr. Kelleher up to give us their thoughts too on the language that we have before us.
All right, Mr. Kelleher, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record. You may answer the question or speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, David Kelleher, Minnesota Historical Society. The A16 amendment certainly is drafted to accurately reflect a couple of the management agreement contracts that we have. The downside of the way the amendment is drafted is that it doesn't contemplate any future management agreement contracts that we might enter into. People are not lining up to enter into these arrangements. We have to work with partners in a community. We're negotiating with a partner in a community right now to assist with management of a site. Since this is drafted very specifically, it may preclude other such arrangements in the future. And the original language that is in the A5 amendment would give us that flexibility. There are probably some other ways that would give us the flexibility, but name the types of organizations such as nonprofits or tribes without being quite so specific as the A16 amendment. So I think we're trying to find that balance between flexibility and specificity, and giving us some flexibility in the future to do these arrangements and make sure we keep these places open to the public, because otherwise these sites might not be open to the public if we don't have a partner to operate them.
Senator Xiong to the A16.
Yeah, and I think, given, you know, what the testifier had provided, I'd urge a no vote on the amendment, but we certainly can try to work on this, and maybe get input from Mr. Kelleher for something down the road, but
Okay.
I'd encourage a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Xiong. Members, any other discussion before I go back to Senator Drazkowski? Okay, Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just encourage your support for this amendment. Certainly, if the Historical Society wants to do additional contracting, I think this body is open to that, and we can certainly, and I suspect you don't have to do that within a particular, we meet every year, Mr. Kelleher, so I think, you know, you could come here and Senator Xiong or somebody else that's going to be here in a future year, because I'm not going. Oh, Senator Zhang's not, you're retiring too?
Yeah, we're leaving.
Okay. Several, he said somebody else, okay. Someone other than Senator Xiong or I will be able to offer that bill and bring that authority forward with the legislature granting it rather than simply leaving it wide open. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski.
I think
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, did you want to request something? Roll call requested, roll call granted. The clerk will take the roll on the A16 amendment.
Chair Xiong,
No.
Vice Chair Gustafson, Vice Chair McQuaid,
No.
Lead Lang,
Aye.
Senator Bahr, Senator Swedzinski,
No.
Senator Drazkowski,
Aye.
Senator Fateh, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger,
No.
Senator Johnson-Stewart,
No.
Senator Corian,
Aye.
Senator Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, there are 5 ayes and 5 noes.
With there being 5 ayes and 5 noes, the amendment is not adopted. Senator Drazkowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got the A11 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A11 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I've got a series of amendments, Madam Chair, members, that were all bills that I introduced, all bills that address fraud in our government, and I think this is a vehicle to do it. I did see also that, and talking with Senator Gustafson and her bill, that would be another vehicle to bring these. This particular bill is, I think I counted up 12 or more provisions in here from 12 or more different bills, all Democrat bills, no Republican bills, and this would allow us to make this really actually a bipartisan bill if we could put some of these anti-fraud measures, which I think, I hope have bipartisan support. This is the first one I have. It's the A11 amendment. I introduced this last year, and we've had some discussion within those of us who are working in the context of the OIG bill about this, but certainly this, rather than fitting into an OIG bill, fits into a bill like this one. This is a do not pay database. The General Accounting Office at the federal level, I think it's a GAO. One of the federal agencies organizes this for the federal government. They've got multiple agencies involved in this at the federal level. So this would model it in state government and would say that agencies would get together the information that they have on people who have passed away, dead people, people who are convicted or suspected of fraud against the state or owes the state money, so that then those agencies that do make grant payments and other types of welfare payments and other payments from the state would be able to review and be required to review that database and provide that scrutiny against those payments before they actually make them, so that they were fully informed and ready to spend the people's money. So that's what this does, Madam Chair, members, Senator Xiong, and I encourage your support.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. I have a question. Would this cost money? Senator Drazkowski.
I don't know. I haven't been able to get a hearing on the bill, Madam Chair, so I don't have a fiscal note, but I'd like that too. I don't know, if we attach it to the bill, will we get a fiscal note?
Well, Senator Drazkowski, if we attach it to the bill, we might have having to send it to finance, which this is the policy omnibus bill.
Oh, true it is. True enough. Maybe I can talk to Mr. Erickson about fiscal notes, so I can maybe bring it to the floor. I do want this committee, Madam Chair, to hear this bill, and I want some feedback on it, and the same with all of these. And I haven't looked at them in terms of finance, but we will be, will we be bringing a finance bill next week?
Senator Xiong.
I don't know about
Or
next week.
Not next week, but next
Senator
deadline.
Drazkowski.
Yes, we're looking to work on that.
Okay.
And maybe we could have that
Senator
discussion at a later date.
So Senator Drazkowski, I'm going to suggest that you take a look at all those amendments and make sure that there's a difference between the policy and finance ones, and then work with Chair Xiong on the finance ones before we have our finance bill.
That was exactly my thought, Madam Chair. So I'll withdraw the A11th amendment, and we'll look at that against finance.
Senator Drazkowski withdraws the A11 amendment. Senator Drazkowski, do you want a second to look at your other ones before you continue, and I can go to someone else?
Is there another amendment someone else has to offer, Madam Chair?
I can look.
Okay.
I think there's an A17. And that's yours, Senator Xiong?
Yep,
Ms. James, would you like to
I think they
explain?
should be passing it out, or it should be in your packet.
Thank you. Senator Xiong's A17 is getting passed out. Ms. James, would you like to speak to it?
Madam Chair and members, this makes the same changes to the provision from Senator Paz's bill establishing the Hmong American Heritage Week that we made to her bill that the committee adopted yesterday, or was that earlier today? It was earlier today.
Thank you, Ms. James. Senator Xiong, would you like to add any remarks about the provision? Okay. We're still waiting for it to be passed out, but members, it's in your packets. Okay, member discussion on the A17. All those in favor of the A17 say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A17 is adopted. Moving on to the A18. Senator Xiong, this is your amendment.
Yep, and I think this one should also already be in the packet. Maybe council can talk to that bill.
Ms. James?
Amendment.
Sorry, Mr., I don't know your last name, I'm sorry. Hunter.
Mr. Hunter.
Hunter, yes. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'm sorry, was the question to describe this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is a bill which permits municipalities to fund the construction, reconstruction, extension, or maintenance of thermal energy networks. And it also, in section, if you look on page 4, it adds thermal energy networks in a couple different places in statute to allow counties and municipalities to bond for them, and also defines thermal energy networks as waterworks, also for purposes of bonding and doing special assessments to fund these types of underground thermal energy networks.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Senator Xiong, anything to add about the A18?
No, and then I think it was a bill that we had heard earlier, and so making some corrections to it.
Member discussion on the A18 amendment. Senator Bahr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to make sure I got this right, this is just permissive language to allow the cities and the counties to move forward with this type of networking, correct? Thermal energy?
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Bahr. Yes, and I also believe this had a companion bill in the House that passed to the House floor as well, which I didn't mention earlier. But yes, it is a permissive language. It does not require any municipality to bond or do a special assessment.
Senator Bahr? Okay. Any more discussion on the A18? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A18 is adopted. Any other amendments? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Just kind of looking through on page 1, we changed line 1.25 to say municipalities instead of counties, so can I do an oral amendment to update that, please?
Yes, Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger, state your oral amendment.
Okay, on line 1.25, replace counties with municipalities.
Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger moves to orally amend the A5 amendment on line 1.25, strike counties and replace it with municipalities. Members, this is identical to when we did it in the bill that Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger brought 30 minutes ago. Any other discussion on this oral amendment? Senator Xiong to the amendment, oral amendment?
Good to go.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The oral amendment is adopted. Any other amendments? Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The A10 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A10 amendment. Senator Drazkowski, while that gets passed around, would you like to describe it?
Yes, Madam Chair, and maybe council can help me with this too. This provides that if an employer or official has reported misuse of public funds related to a claim against the government, that the official violates 609.455 by dispersing the funds before a completed investigation by the Attorney General or legislative auditor concludes that the claim is not a violation of law. It increases, we currently have a penalty in law that's 5 years or payment of a fine of not more than $10,000 for knowing that a payment is illegal and actually making it. This increases it to 7 years and $20,000, and then includes the definition for claim or demand. So that's what the amendment does. I wonder if council can help walk me through this too. If Ms. James, can you explain it better than I can?
Ms. James.
Madam Chair and Senator Drazkowski and members, I'm not sure I can do any better than that. I felt that that was a complete description of the amendment. I'm not able to think of anything to add to your description. I think
Okay.
that's right.
It increases penalties for fraud within government. So if a government employee is making payments while they know that those payments are illegal, this increases our sentence for doing that.
Senator Xiong.
Yeah, if I could, if Senator Drazkowski would yield, I just had a question, the move from 5 to 7, 10 to 20, is that like related to another section of criminal law, or why those numbers are extension of dates?
Senator
Is it
Drazkowski.
like from is it from like a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor or something?
Senator Drazkowski.
Madam Chair and Senator Xiong, no, they're just simply numbers I chose to increase them. They're not connected to anything. I don't know that they have any effect to do anything else. I haven't, yeah. So is this, and I don't know, Senator Xiong, is your bill going through judiciary on the way out?
Senator Xiong.
We would like to send it to the floor, but I think this would, because of the change of the years, I think it will pull it into judiciary for sure.
Yes, Senator Xiong, about the reference on 1.12 also, 609.455 would also send it to judiciary.
I'd ask for a no vote for now. I don't know if it's going to conflict with other pieces of criminal law that we might have on statute. And so for now, I'd encourage a no vote.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll withdraw the amendment for now, and we're going to find a way to have that discussion some more. But this way, you guys get to see my ideas, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. They're very interesting.
And they all address fraud.
Wonderful.
And, Madam Chair, sorry I didn't go through you, but Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Drazkowski.
They do address fraud, and I'm hoping that we can have longer discussions about this in committee, because this is the committee that should be addressing this. And we did hear Senator Gustafson's bill, and I think we had Senator Kupek's bill, which were very good bills. There's a lot more work we need to do, and there's a lot more ideas that we have, and I have a bunch of them, and we haven't had a chance to have these heard, so you're hearing my pent-up, let's hear some fraud bill discussion here today, and that's what we have. The next bill, or next amendment, is the A9 amendment, and that provides, and it requires the agency to, in situations where the employee did not have a personal benefit from a payment that was made illegally, but they knew that it was claimed fraudulently, that they would be required to receive discipline from the agency. And so if you read on 1.18 and 19, it says a failure to report suspected theft, embezzlement or unlawful use of public funds or property is subject to disciplinary actions, including freezing the employee's salary for 2 years following the failure to report. Madam Chair, we have had agencies in the last 5 years that have done this, that they have known about fraud going on in our government, and there have been no repercussions to those individuals in those agencies. And I don't have to look any further than the Minnesota Department of Education and Feeding Our Future. And so if we have employees that know that this behavior is going on and there's no discipline for them, what kind of government are we running here? And so this provides that there has to be discipline if they know that this fraudulent activity is going on and that they don't act properly, so if they fail to act.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Senator Xiong.
Thank you for the amendment, Senator Drazkowski. Would this also have, I think this would also have judiciary, issues for the judiciary, maybe some notice requirements that are probably going to be needed, and penalties. Have you talked with the agencies, Senator Drazkowski, if Senator Drazkowski would yield?
Well, we don't have to yield in here, yeah. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Xiong, I have not talked to the agencies. They don't like this. But I would strike 1.11 through 1.21 from the amendment, Madam Chair. That would get rid of the portion that is problematic for, that Senator Xiong pointed out. I'd move to strike that.
Okay, Senator Drazkowski, you want to divide the amendment there then?
I'd like to strike
it?
1.11 through 1.21 from the amendment, Madam Chair.
Senator Drazkowski moves to strike 1.11 to 1.21. Discussion on that oral amendment. Senator Bahr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It probably should be 1.10, not 1.11.
Senator Drazkowski, would you like to orally amend your oral amendment?
As Senator Bahr said, Madam Chair.
Okay, so 1.10 to 1.21. I'm going to speak to this briefly and just let you know that, and I only know this because I went for my very first hearing in the Labor Committee, but Senator Drazkowski, the top part of your amendment would send this bill to Labor, because that's the statute that 179A is in. Oh, is it ours? I'm being told it's ours. Hold on.
Well, Madam Chair, if we
Senator Drazkowski.
if we pulled every chapter out of the Omnibus bill and looked at the statutory references in the bill, we could make reason for all of these to go to judiciary or jobs or some other committee. This bill was referred to our committee, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Okay, Senator Xiong, to the top part of the amendment, or we have to vote on that first. Let's vote on striking to that part of the amendment first, Senator Xiong.
Does council have any recommendations for changes of the language? Other than that, that should be fine.
Ms. James.
Madam Chair, Senator Xiong, and members, I don't have any suggestions for changes to the language, no.
Senator Xiong.
I don't know if it's under there or would run into collective bargaining issues or notice issues, and so I'd encourage a no vote on the amendment for now.
Other member discussion on the amendment? Senator Gustafson.
Did we vote to strike this yet?
Sorry, Madam Chair, first of all, question, did we already vote on striking the other part of the amendment? No, we didn't yet. Okay, I can hang on then.
And Senator Xiong, are you recommending a no vote on striking the language? Is that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
All right, Senator Drazkowski moves to strike 1.10 to 1.21. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? No. They're stricken. Okay, Senator Drazkowski, to your amendment remaining.
Madam Chair, this simply deals with limiting a promotion or wage increase for 2 years for failing to act to address fraud. So voting for this amendment will help decrease fraud in state government. It will provide deterrence for employees that want to act in ways that are not in accordance with the taxpayers of our state and protecting the fiduciary or bringing forward and carrying out the fiduciary functions of government to protect people's money. It's a small piece, but it is one that will provide a signal to our employees throughout state government. So I don't know why it would need to go to the Labor Committee. It's simply dealing with the employees of the state of Minnesota, not necessarily for labor policy throughout the state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. I do just want to note, I looked up the statute. This is an entire statute about strikes and lockouts, labor disputes. And so and representatives, employees, and employees. So I'm a little worried to be wading into without any, I went before the Labor Committee for my very first time yesterday. So I have just no knowledge of what we might be doing. I'm not opposed to the principle of it, but when you change the law, you should know what you're doing with it. And I can't say that I know that here. Senator Gustafson, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And we had talked briefly about this. I like the idea of it. I get a little worried, and that's why I'm glad to know that this is a labor statute, and I would want the Labor Committee to take a look at it, because the part about the employee knows, I would maybe want to say knows beyond a reasonable doubt, or I just worry about the state worker who's just, doing their best, and I would want to make sure that we're not criminalizing people who shouldn't be criminalized here, and I understand it's just about a promotion or a wage increase, but that starts to get into the labor piece of that statute, and I just don't know that that's just what we should do on the fly and with an amendment, but we could work on it for the floor.
If I could add one more thing, of course I can, I'm the chair, why not? Senator Drazkowski, just coming over from Human Services, there are times when there's an investigation underway, and while the investigation continues, in order to not hinder that investigation, things just continue seemingly as normal while law enforcement collects evidence. I believe it's part of our Medicaid statute that there are times in which we can't withhold payments. And so I wouldn't want to punish an employee who's like, no, of course, no, we all know there's an investigation going on, but they're still doing their job duties as required to by federal law, state law. Just a thought of one of the ways we could be messing up something that we're not totally sure that we're doing. Senator Drazkowski, sorry.
Thank you. It sounds like we're ready to vote, Madam Chair.
Okay, members.
If so, I just want to make one more plea. This is an amendment, and I'm just going to read it. It says, an employee who participates in the, let me start over. An employee who participates in the disbursement of money the employee knows to be claimed fraudulently, but for which the employee does not personally benefit, is not eligible for a promotion or wage increase for 2 years following the failure to act. So, Madam Chair, this is an amendment to reduce fraud in government. So a yes vote is a vote to reduce fraud in government and hold employees accountable for the people's money. A no vote will allow fraudulent situations to continue in our government. So I encourage your support. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ask for roll call, Madam Chair.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Xiong, I apologize, I didn't come to you before I went to Senator Drazkowski.
I'm just uncomfortable with some of the language in here. Failure to report suspected theft or unlawful use of public funds, and so it's not yet clear. There's a standard that's missing, and so if there's a DMV worker, DVS worker seeing something that's suspected, and they're going to be on the hook for 2 years for failure to report that, what does that mean for our government services? And so I'd encourage a no vote for this.
Senator Gustafson.
Sorry to speak twice on this, but we brought up a really good point. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. If we have payment freezes and then there's like due process, and so during that time, if later on it is found that it was there was a problem, the investigation came back and there was a problem, but during that time of due process, it means that every one of those employees is now like not eligible for a promotion or a wage, and we're talking about any employee, so you're talking about just low-level hourly wage or like entry-level positions. I think like I said, I think the spirit of the amendment is good, but it just needs a little bit more work, and I would want to talk to labor. I would want to ask a little bit more about what do we do during investigations. It's just not quite ready yet, so I don't know that voting no on this means that you want fraud. I think it just means that this is an amendment that needs a lot more work.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to look at this and I agree, I understand the intent, but at the same time, it's like, this just feels like a violation of the Public Employee Labor Relations Act. And again, this just feels like really broad and just like, are we gonna now have people, I'm mad at this employee, so I'm gonna like tattle on them. There's no like mechanism in place, there's no way to operationalize this, and I'm just really concerned that we are doing this the wrong way and it's rushed through, and I'm gonna be a no vote.
Senator Drazkowski, can I ask a question? There was a pretty notable case that we heard about in Human Services where DHS wanted to do a payment withhold. They were sued by the provider, and the court ordered the department to continue providing payments. Would those employees then be not eligible for promotions or wages because the court told them they had to continue giving payments that they knew to be fraudulent? Senator Drazkowski.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, Madam Chair, and I didn't hear clearly the first part of what you were saying.
Happy to repeat it. There was a notable case that we've talked about in the Human Services Committee where the department wanted to do payment withholds. The provider sued the department, and the court ordered the department to continue paying them. Would the employees at the department who claimed that that was going out fraudulently, who wanted to withhold the payments and started doing that, and were ordered by the court to then pay the provider, would they be subject to this and not eligible for promotions or wage increases because they participated in the disbursement of money that they knew was fraudulent, even though they were ordered by the court to give it out?
Oh, well, Madam Chair.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, I suspect if the court said that that the agency would legally be required to make payments, that the employees would act in that manner on behalf of the agency, and that would be, the court was saying in that situation, that was the law at that point.
So Senator Drazkowski, so this is the exact problem with the amendment, because the reason why the court ordered them to do that is because of what federal law requires under the Medicaid Act, not because the court was saying this person wasn't doing fraud. It was because they were required to continue paying them under what the federal law requires us to do when we enter into CMS contracts. And so in that case, you've said that these employees any employee who participates in the disbursement of money, the employees knows to be claimed fraudulently. There's no exception for if the court orders you to do it, or federal law requires you to do it, or the CMS contract or Medicaid waiver plan requires you to do it. So you're just saying anyone who does it, whether they're being forced, your presumption here in this amendment is that they're doing it like gleefully and not because the law requires them to do it. And now we're punishing them with not the ability to get a promotion or wage increase for 2 years for following federal law or the Medicaid plan or CMS contracts. That, I think, is what my worry is. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the amendment says that the employee knows to be claimed fraudulently. So if employee knows the law, because they are carrying out the law, and that they know that it's claimed fraudulently, at that point they would lose their wage increase for 2 years. They wouldn't go to jail. They would simply not get a wage increase. They wouldn't get a wage decrease. They just wouldn't get a wage increase, and that's what this does. And it would help decrease fraud in our agency, and I encourage your support.
Any other discussion? Okay. Roll call requested, roll call granted. You may take the roll.
Chair Xiong?
No.
Chair McQuaid?
No.
Vice Chair Gustafson?
No.
Senator Lang?
Aye.
Senator Bahr?
Aye.
Senator Złotynski?
No.
Senator Drazkowski?
Aye.
Senator Fateh?
No.
Senator Johnson Stewart? Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
No.
Senator Corian?
Yes.
Senator Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, there are, or Madam Chair, there are 5 ayes and 6 noes.
With there being 5 ayes and 6 noes, the amendment is not adopted. Any other amendments?
Madam Chair, I have
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you. I have the A7 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A7 amendment. Senator Drazkowski, would you like to speak to it while we receive it?
This amendment requires the Commissioner Management Budget in their normal training. They conduct annual training for the employees throughout state agencies, Madam Chair. And this would require them to provide in that training education on preventing, recognizing, reacting to suspected fraud or misuse of state funds. This would, and the consequences, so that they were aware of the consequences for failing to report fraud and to make a payment on a claim or demand in violation of 609.455. So they would know what fraud is and know what to do when they saw fraud. That's what this amendment does, and it will help reduce fraud in our state government, and I encourage your support.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Senator Xiong to the amendment.
I was wondering if there's anybody from MMB that might be here, or?
Is there anybody from MMB here?
I like more training. Maybe there's already a program already in place, but we're always open to more education.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and please speak to the amendment.
Hi, thank you, committee members. Eric Anderson, Government Relations Director at Minnesota Management and Budget. I hadn't had a chance to review the contents of the amendment, so I'm not sure how it would, the degree to which it would align with what Senator Drazkowski is proposing. I know we are in the process of rolling out a training related to fraud prevention for state agency employees.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I find that amazing. This has been in the form of a bill for over a year. And I don't know, does MMB, I don't really need to ask them if MMB looks through the bills. I think they look through the bills they want to see, Madam Chair, but apparently they didn't see this one. But it's simply requires them to include in their training for state employees, Madam Chair. They do this in all the state agencies every year, and include a component on identifying fraud, require them to, each employee to sign an acknowledgement that the employee completed the annual training, and that the employee is aware of the consequences for failing to report fraud and to make a payment on a claim or demand in violation of the law. What are the consequences for that? So this will help reduce fraud in our government by having employees know how to look for fraud and know what the consequences are if they make payments when they aren't supposed to. And so if we want to reduce fraud, this will do it, and it'll help do it. And a yes vote will help decrease fraud. A no vote will allow fraud to continue in our government. I encourage your support. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ask for roll call.
Roll call requested. Roll call will be given. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to think back because we do a lot of training, and I'm pretty sure this is already covered, and if not, I'm pretty sure it was covered in one of the governor's executive orders that he gave earlier about like addressing fraud and fraud measures.
I think
Senator Xiong.
we should be fine with the amendment.
Yeah.
We should be fine with the amendment. I encourage the yes vote.
Thank you. Yeah, I think normally this would probably cost something, but I think this is duplicative of things that already exist, so, you know, why not? Any other member discussion on the A7? Okay, Senator Drazkowski, final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All those in favor of the A7, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A7 is adopted. Senator Drazkowski.
I did have a roll call, Madam Chair. but
Oh, I am so sorry. Would you like to go back, Senator Drazkowski?
Can I retroactively withdraw it?
I don't know, can you? Let's go through it. All right.
I'll withdraw the roll call if you want to vote again, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, with roll call withdrawn, Senator Drazkowski renews his motion to vote on the A7 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A7 is adopted appropriately. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next is the A8 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A8 amendment. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, members, we have had situations in our past where this government has taken contracts from the federal government and then deployed those contracts and carried them out on behalf of the federal government as an agent of the federal government. This one says that if we are a participant in a contract with the federal government, that we have to include as a provision in the contract that we have the ability to withhold funds if we identify fraud. That's what this says. We have to include in our contract and demand federal government, we're going to do this contract with you, but we have to have the ability written into the contract that we have the right, if we see fraud, to stop making payments. That's what this amendment does. Encourage your support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Xiong.
I think we might have seen some version of this contract language. I'm not sure. Maybe admin or MMB, if they have somebody here, could enlighten us with this provision. Because I think we've seen it before in some form or fashion.
Anybody from admin or MMB can speak to this?
Or it might already have some version of it somewhere.
Sure. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie Byrell from the Department of Administration. Appreciate this amendment. I would be hesitant to encourage you to adopt this because I don't know if the federal government would allow this to be a term in our contracts.
Thank you. Senator Xiong.
Yeah, so I think that was something that came up. I know that we did take on this language, but it was taken out later because there was legal concerns about what federal requirements might be, and so I don't want us to lose out on federal contracts, and so that I encourage a no vote on this.
Thank you, Senator Xiong. Thank you, Ms. Bahr. Thank you. Senator Drazkowski, I will just reflect back that concern. There's extensive contracts that are entered into between the state and the federal government, and the state doesn't really get to choose the terms of those if we want federal dollars. And I can tell you that there are, I'll give you an example. I tried to change the redetermination date for MAEPD. Couldn't do it because it's not in state law, because we chose it. It's in state law because the federal government chose it. And so there are a lot of timelines and procedures and policies that we are legally required to follow. For example, having an OIG at DHS, we have to do that per federal law. And so I think that something like this, without being sure if we are putting in peril contracts we currently have, federal dollars we're currently getting, I don't think I'd feel comfortable accepting. And I can tell you that there are some conditions in federal contracts that don't allow us to payment withhold without extensive partnership with the federal government first. It doesn't just happen on suspicion by a state employee. Senator Drazkowski.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a vote on it, Madam Chair. I'm not, I think we can work with this as we go forward in the process, but I think we should put it on the bill, because going in this direction, we might need to check with the federal government. I can't imagine the federal government wouldn't want us to withhold funds when we see that there's fraud. And that's what this says. I think we need to have our contract people, when they're working with the federal government each and every time, contemplate this in the contract arrangements. So maybe we can change the wording, Senator Xiong, as we go forward in order to make that happen. I'm glad to work with you on that. But I think we need to do this in one form or another. And I'm happy to check in with the federal government and see what their approach would be. But I can't imagine that they would want us to make payments intentionally, make payments through an intentional or deceptive act to gain unlawful benefit. So I'd ask us to put this on the bill. This will help us reduce fraud in the state.
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But I would just say the problem is that we don't know. And if we're entering into federal contracts and it might be on their terms, and now we are at risk of losing even more federal funding, then what do we do? And I would say that, again, part of bringing forward something that would have this change to it means being able to talk to the federal government before the amendment is offered, so we know what these consequences are. So I don't think it's ready for this committee. If there are people we can talk to at the federal government who say that, nope, this is something that you should do, this is needed. They do have their own departments and investigators who also do this work as well. But you got to check in with them before we take this and put it on the bill, I think. So maybe it's something for the floor, but it's not ready for here.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. I will also just add to Senator Drazkowski, the state is sometimes a pass-through for the federal government. And so we can't create all the standards to withhold federal funds. Sometimes those standards are, again, set by the federal government, and we can't just change those. So even the term reasonable suspicion, what if the threshold's actually higher for the federal government? Or what if it's a different suspicion? Or what if it's a different level of employee? Or it's a different level of involvement in dispersing the funds? Or, you know, when you're talking about contracts with the federal government and the money that they give to the state, it is so versatile that I don't think you could capture it in this very small amount, because you could be everything from higher ed to childcare to Medicaid to schools to parks to roads. I mean, the government is vast. And so I don't know what all the standards are. I know what they are in the jurisdictions I sit in. And even knowing that, I can tell you that this, could potentially make us violate a bunch of federal laws. Any follow-up, Senator Drazkowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think we want state government entering into a contract with anybody if they expect us to make payments when we know it's fraud. So this one's very clear. It's very common sense, and it says if we enter into a contract with the federal government, we have to have authorization to withhold money when we know there's fraud. I'd encourage your support. A yes vote will be a vote in favor of reducing fraud. A no vote will be a vote to allow fraud to continue in our government. And I ask for roll call, Madam Chair.
Roll call requested, roll call given.
Chair Xiong?
No.
Vice Chair Gustafson?
No.
Sorry, Chair McQuaid?
No.
Lead Lang?
Aye.
Senator Bahr?
Aye.
Senator Złotynski?
No.
Senator Drazkowski?
Aye.
Senator Fateh? No. Senator Hemmingsen-Jaeger?
No.
Senator Johnson Stewart? Senator Coran?
Yes.
Senator Matthews? Madam Chair, there are 6 noes and 5 ayes.
There being 6 noes and 5 ayes, the amendment is not adopted. Any other amendments? Senator Drazkowski, would you be willing to share with us how many more we have, if you're willing?
I only have 2 left, and I want us, Madam Chair, to hear Senator Bahr's bill.
Me too.
So the next one is the A12 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A12 amendment. Would you like to describe the amendment, Senator Drazkowski?
Actually, I withdraw that amendment, Madam Chair. Can I withdraw it?
Senator Drazkowski withdraws the A12 amendment.
I'm down to 1.
Senator
The
Drazkowski.
A13 amendment, Madam Chair.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A13 amendment. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, members, this amendment does not have a fiscal cost. It shouldn't have to go to any other committee, Senator Xiong. But I have heard in my time in the legislature, including about 1 or 2 years ago, that one was from the Secretary of State's office. Another one that I've heard commonly is from the DNR, where they will have an audio message on the radio that says, this is all the wonderful things that are going on, and this is brought to you by the DNR, by the Department of Natural Resources, or this is brought to you by the Secretary of State's office. That's what they say in their ads that they include on the radio. It's paid for by the taxpayers of Minnesota, Madam Chair. It's not paid for by the Secretary of State's office to do something that appears to the taxpayers at that point to be a campaign ad. And then it holds them accountable so that if a commissioner of an agency or a constitutional officer does this and claims that it's from the Secretary of State or from the DNR, that they'll have to pay for the ad instead of the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota, and that the ad should include, when they do ads like that, paid for by the hardworking taxpayers of Minnesota, rather than paid for by the DNR or paid for by the Secretary of State. I've heard that multiple times. We are the body, members, that directs our state government on how to operate, and they're doing this. I've heard it multiple times, and it's very, very troubling when we hear this happen, and they are taking credit for an ad that is paid for by the taxpayers of Minnesota and claiming credit that it's coming from their office or their agency. So I'd encourage your support.
Senator Xiong.
Members, I'd encourage a no vote. I think the personal liability piece of it would trigger it to go to judiciary. And I just am not comfortable or unsure of what the messaging might be or how that came about. I'm sure if I ask all 67 senators, they're going to have something different they want to put on there. But I'd encourage a no vote for now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also encourage a no vote for the simple reason of not every ad that is put out by the state government is paid for by the taxpayer. Sometimes it's paid for by settlements with large corporations. Sometimes it is paid for with federal dollars. There are a lot of health campaigns that come through that way. A lot of education, like higher ed things come through from federal government. Some come from, so, exactly. The amendment says the taxpayers of Minnesota and not taxpayers, period. So it would be false advertising, I guess is what I'm saying, Senator Drazkowski, because not every single ad that is put out by the state of Minnesota is paid for in that way. Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Drazkowski, for that amendment. And I would also argue that the term hardworking doesn't apply to all taxpayers. Some workers at Burger mows while they're on the clock, so I think we should strike it.
Thank you, Senator Fateh. Any other member discussion? Senator Drazkowski. Oh, sorry. Before you go, Senator Bahr, I'll let you have the last word, Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe as a, I don't know if we want to try an oral amendment on here, but instead of hardworking taxpayers, we just put paid for, oh, take that out, paid for with Minnesota tax dollars.
Senator Bahr, I would restate my original position is that not every ad that is put out by the state of Minnesota is paid for with taxpayer money.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't say taxpayer money, I said tax dollars, or state dollars or something like that. So it came out of it's a settlement, it all goes in the general fund, and then it gets dispersed all over the place. I think the point we're trying to get to is we're using our tax dollars to promote something that some of us don't believe in, as opposed to something else. And I'm going to give you a different example I see all the time. I see this billboard, and I know this is not state money, this is federal money, but I continually see this billboard pop up. It'll be up for a month and then down for 2 or 3 months about create an ad on highway safety and you can win a scholarship. I know that's federal money, but it's still paid for with something, it's partially paid for with money that I paid with my tax dollars, and I would really rather see that money go somewhere else, like maybe my retirement account.
Senator Xiong?
I'd stick with encourage a no vote on it.
I'll just add one more time. Not all settlement dollars go to the general fund. Some of them go to other funds, like Crime Victim Services is one of my bills. So I would be very wary to put into state law a requirement that the state potentially lie about an ad simply in order to avoid personal liability. So I would urge a no vote. Cute idea, though. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not cute at all. It's smart. You know, I think I'm going to work on this between you and the floor, and I'm going to address your concern and others' concerns, and I'll be looking for your vote when we get there, because we can't have agencies taking credit for something that benefits them. When you say the Secretary of State's office and the current Secretary of State is up for election that year, that doesn't do well, regardless of which party the Secretary of State is in. So I'll work on the language, withdraw the amendment, and bring it to another place down the road. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Senator Drazkowski withdraws the A13 amendment. Any other amendments? Senator Xiong to Senate File 4555 as amended.
Thank you, members, for the discussion and the amendments for us to look at a few different things, but I appreciate your work, your time on this committee. We will be bringing in a finance omnibus bill or some form at a later date, and I will reach out to members and let them know about sort of what the next steps for us will be. But I thank you all for contributing to the bill, and looking forward to the next step for our committee.
Thank you, Senator Xiong. Senator Xiong moves that Senate File 4555 as amended be recommended to pass and sent to general orders. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Senate File 4555 is sent to general orders. Thank you, Senator Xiong. If I may, Senator Xiong, while you work your way back up to the table, since we're on our last bill, but I just want to congratulate you on your last policy omnibus, and thank you for your service to this committee as the fearless chair. I know it is not easy, especially this committee, so it has been a pleasure to be your vice chair, and thank you for all of your hard work. I turn the gavel back to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Next up, Senator Bahr. We certainly saved the best for last. Yes. Senator Bahr, whenever you are ready, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of the committee, thank you for your time. I will try to be brief, but this is something we don't normally see floated around here. But this addresses a lot of the issues we've done today in a more different manner. So let me start with what Senate File 3252 is not. It is not a call for a convention of any type, whether amendment or constitutional. It is not, does not require the state to actually do anything. What it does do is put a delegate selection and recall methods into statute prior to any possible amendment convention happening. It could be used for either, I believe, but it's specifically drafted for an amendment convention. I can kind of, you want me to walk through the bill, Mr. Chair, or just take questions or describe or anything? How do you want me to present
Could
this?
you just generally describe the bill?
Okay, so the beginning of this, there's some definitions in section 1 or subdivision 1. Then there's qualifications for delegates that may be selected to go to a possible convention in the future. And that's listed in subdivision 3. Subdivision 4 is how you would select the delegates to go. And what I wanted to create with this was a truly bipartisan selection process. So each leader of each of the caucuses, each of the 4 caucuses would select one, and then the four leaders would have to select a 5th. If they could not agree on a 5th member to go as the odd number, then our delegation would go with 4. So anytime the state voted for anything, you'd have to have a majority vote, so you'd have to have bipartisan buy-in. So I did not want this to become a partisan issue because it's representing the state as a whole at a possible convention in the future and not a partisan position. So that's why the option on the 5th one was placed there. Then continuing on with this, subdivision 5 is the resolution that the legislature would need to pass should there be a convention call, and it would list out all the instructions that would need to be in there, who the delegates are, and restrictions on what they could or could not vote on, topics, things like that. Moving on down through here, there's subdivision 6 requires an oath to be taken by every delegate prior to accepting their credentials. Then where the credentials are filed is in subdivision 7. If there happens to be a vacancy, somebody leaves the convention, how that vacancy would be filled. Compensation, and the only compensation, there's no extra compensation in here other than what we normally get as legislators. But there is, under the delegate appointment, if we had an ex-legislator that was appointed, they would be paid at the rate of our members would currently. So wouldn't get any extra or any less than any of the other delegates there. Section 10 is a prohibition on receiving gifts or trying to basically buy one of our delegates at a convention. Subdivision 11 is quorum and conduct and what we would do and how we would act at the convention, who you could talk to, who you can't talk to, specifically media. There are some restrictions on talking to media while you're at this convention. All the media would be done through a specific person, And any disagreements we have within our delegation would have to be aired not during the convention, but afterwards. Let's see, continue on down through here. Article Fund, Subdivision 12, the Delegate Advisory Committee, which actually is the 4 caucus leaders. And then they would be able to watch the proceedings and recall any delegate. There's, the Subdivision 13 is the basically the delegate recall. If one of our delegates got off topic, say it was a convention called for fiscal restraints and they started talking about campaign finance reform, they could be recalled at that time. This is the removal process for that and how we would refill the vacancy at that point. And lastly, line 6.6 puts in a civil penalty of $20,000 for any delegate that acts outside the scope of the convention call. And with that, I will stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Bahr. Members of the committee, any questions or comments to the bill? Senator McQuaid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Bahr. We've talked about this for almost a decade now. Happy to see it before me. I have one suggestion, one question. On line 2.25 about the 5th delegate by unanimous choice, this is a recommendation. It's not something you have to do. You could also put that 5th one to like the Supreme Court or like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court or, like a different branch of government. Could be that unanimous 5th choice or that 5th choice. Maybe put forward a slate and then they choose. I don't know. Because I would hate us to be underrepresented at a convention. And then my question for you is on 5.51, communicate with the media. How narrow or broadly are you defining media? Is this posting on your own page? Is this posting your own videos? Is this talking to independent journalists?
Sorry, I missed the line number.
5.1.
Thank you. Right at the beginning. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the media, probably we could define media a little bit better in here, but the intent is basically communications of internal discussion between the members of the delegation should not be exposed publicly. If we have a disagreement on a word choice or something like that where it turns into a partisan fight in our delegation, that should stay a partisan fight inside the delegation until the convention is recessed.
Senator McQuaid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be worth just naming that since the media might not be the only way one could expose that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members? Seeing no further discussion, the Senate file, let's see here, 3252 is laid over. Thank you, Senator Bahr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And with that, the committee is adjourned. Thank you all.